Chapter 504. At this moment, the smoke dragon fleet was completely enraged. A loud voice reverberated in the sea. The golden runes on the sea god's pardon floated into the air, and the sea seemed to be boiling. From time to time, huge waves rose and slammed the players' warships into the water. In the sky, the surging dark clouds kept sending down lightning punishments. The players' warships couldn't withstand these attacks, and many of the players' warships were sunk by the violent power of nature. At this moment, Xiaoqi frowned. Although the players had caused damage to the smoke dragon fleet, they hadn't sunk a single warship yet. This wasn't what she wanted to see. It's useless. The sea god's pardon is an advanced legendary treasure. If we can't destroy it, the external interference won't stop. However, we can't even break the defense of the smoke dragon fleet's main warship. We've lost this battle. When Xiaoqi heard this, she rolled her eyes in exasperation. Sister Yu, do you have any good suggestions? Even if we lose, we should at least sink a few warships, right? Otherwise, I won't be willing to lose just like that. Give up on attacking the main warship and focus on attacking the other smoke dragon warship. The defenses of those warships aren't as strong as the main warship. Xiaoqi nodded. Then, she looked up at the surging dark clouds above her head and asked again. Is there a way to disperse these thunderstorm clouds? This thunderstorm cloud is formed by the formation of the smoke dragon battleships below. Every time a smoke dragon battleship sinks, the power of the thunderstorm cloud will weaken by a bit. As long as 1/3 of the smoke dragon battleship is destroyed, the thunderstorm cloud will dissipate by itself. Upon hearing this, Xiaoqi nodded helplessly. Right now, they couldn't even sink one warship, let alone 1/3 of it. It was completely unrealistic. At this thought, Xiaoqi spoke in the live chat channel. Attention, everyone! Give up on attacking the smoke dragon warships and attack the other warships instead. Following Xiaoqi's command, the players changed their attack method again. Although the smoke dragon warships suffered some damage, the damage was still too light in the players' eyes. It was as though the players had spent tens of thousands of gold coins only to buy eggs. Although the tens of thousands of gold coins would return to the players, they felt that it wasn't worth it. At this moment, in the center of the battlefield, the demonic god club's second-year middle schoolers were staring at a smoke dragon battleship that was approaching them from afar. Their expressions were ugly. Boss, kill it. Fatty looked at Enxing and egged him on. Our warship's hardness is only level 10. The damage caused by the collision is negligible. Enxing could not help but sigh. Then what should we do? Why don't we try to worship the demonic god and summon him out? Fatty pointed at the demonic god statue behind him. When Enxing heard this, he couldn't help but roll his eyes. When he turned his head to look, he was stunned to find that a few youths in the guild were already worshipping him devoutly. At this moment, Enxing could not help but cover his face. He recalled that there was a post on the forum saying that the demonic god society was made up of retarded youth. At that time, he was not convinced, but now, he suddenly believed it. The smoke dragon warship was getting closer and closer to them. At this moment, Enxing gritted his teeth. F*CKU. When they collide, we'll jump into the sea and summon our private spectre ship to continue fighting. When Fatty heard this, he nodded solemnly. Those over there, stop worshipping. Get ready to jump into the sea. Enxing turned his head to look at the guild members who were still worshipping the demonic god and roared. At Enxing's roar, the guild members stood up resentfully. At this moment, the smoke dragon warship arrived. Jump! Immediately, the members of the demonic god society jumped into the water one after another. The demonic god warship was smashed into pieces the moment it collided with the smoke dragon warship. Seeing that the demonic god warship was gone just like that, while the smoke dragon warship was unscathed, Fatty, who had fallen into the water, kicked the hull of the smoke dragon warship angrily. Suddenly, a defensive shield appeared, and he was sent flying more than 10 meters away. At this moment, Fatty's temper flared up. He took out a bunch of items from his channel and threw them at the smoke dragon warship. Although he knew that they could not break through the defense, he still wanted to throw them. Among the one-time items, there were items such as the poison mist potion and flame potion that he had bought from the shop. There were also some consumables that he had bought from the auction house. One of them was the thunder pill refined by the bomber. The moment these items collided with the smoke dragon warship, flames and electric arcs exploded. The defensive shield of the warship trembled slightly, but it did not break through. Fatty let out a dispirited sigh when he saw this scene. Right at this moment, an unexpected scene occurred. The thunderclouds above the warship suddenly surged. Then, a bolt of lightning as thick as a bowl struck the shield of the warship. Gotcha! The warship's shield shattered, and the lightning bolt penetrated it, creating a deep hole in the front deck of the warship. The rampaging electric arcs also caused significant damage to the members of the warship. Seeing this, Fatty was dumbfounded. What's going on? He quickly opened the combat interface to check the details. Causing fire damage to the target warship, causing poison mist corrosion damage to the target warship, causing lightning damage to the target warship. The effect of the thunder pill will trigger the heavenly thunder, causing secondary damage to the target warship. After knowing the reason, Fatty's eyes widened. Damn Fatty, how did you do it? At this moment, Ansheng's roar sounded in the live chat channel. Thunder pill, quickly use the thunder pill. What do you mean? It's the thunder pill refined by the bomber. Didn't we each buy one last time? Quickly throw it at this smoke dragon warship, or it will sail away. Fatty said quickly. Hearing this, Ansheng was puzzled, but he still decisively took out a thunder pill from the channel, charged it, and threw it at the warship. But the thunder pill shattered. As the electric arcs lingered, the dark clouds above once again surged toward the smoke dragon warship. Then, a thunderbolt gathered and smashed down. This thunderbolt was even more violent than before, and the warship, which was already overwhelmed, immediately fell apart. Game notification. Target Smoke Dragon Warship number 428 has been sunk. 247 targets have been killed, 46 have been seriously injured. Death statistics complete. As the game notification sounded, a large amount of blue and golden mist emerged from the sunken part of the warship and poured into the bodies of Ansheng and his teammates. In a flash of golden light, they leveled up collectively. At this moment, Ansheng, Fatty, and the others were dumbfounded. They were aware of the strength of these warships. Their level 10 warships could not even break through the defense shield, let alone cause damage to them. However, at this moment, just 2 thunder pills had sunk a warship. At this moment, there was only one thought in their minds. The Bomberman was really awesome. However, what they did not know was that this time, it was not the Bomberman's thunder pill that was effective. Instead, the thunder pill had the effect of attracting thunder, and the formation of the Smoke Dragon warship happened to be the thunderstorm formation. It could be said that it perfectly matched the thunder-attracting effect of the thunder pill. After knowing that the thunder pill could attract thunder, Ansheng hurriedly shouted in the regional live chat channel, "The thunder pill made by the Bomberman can sink the Smoke Dragon warship. Who can send this news to the main voice chat? I don't have the authority to speak in the main voice chat." This news immediately attracted the attention of many players, and soon, the news was passed to Lu Chai. Lu Chai immediately spoke in the main voice chat channel and conveyed the news that the thunder pill could break through the defense of the Smoke Dragon warship to all players. This news was obviously beyond the players' expectations. Although the players knew that the thunder pill made by the Bomberman was very powerful, the defense of the Smoke Dragon warship was at least level 15. Therefore, no players tried to break the defense of the Smoke Dragon warship with the thunder pill. However, after knowing this news, the players suddenly became excited. Many players who bought the thunder pill took out the thunder pill from the channel. One by one, the thunder pill was thrown toward the Smoke Dragon warship. At this moment, The thunderstorm clouds in the sky were like the angry thunder god. Lightning flashed, and lightning pillars that were as thick as the mouth of a bowl struck down. It turned out that the thunder pill could indeed break through the defense of the smoke dragon warship. The defense shields of the smoke dragon warships were shattered one by one, and some warships were even sunk by the lightning pillars. At this moment, the players cheered in the live chat channel. Sinking these smoke dragon warships not only gave them soul coins and EXP, but most importantly, the joy of victory. The players were extremely frustrated when they were suppressed. Now it was finally time for them to fight back. Under the interference of the thunder pill, the thunderstorm clouds seemed to be unable to distinguish between friend and foe. While they struck the players' warships, they also struck the smoke dragon warship. By the time the smoke dragon warships realized this, more than 30 warships had been destroyed. At this moment, the smoke dragon warships were furious. These warships were his treasures and also the capital of the Acheron Trade Union. How could he not be distressed when they were destroyed like this? President, the player clan seems to have something that interferes with the thunderstorm clouds. Should we shut down the formation? The intelligence personnel at the side said hurriedly. Looking at the thunderstorm clouds that kept raining down lightning, the smoke dragon warship could not help but grit his teeth. Shut it down. Upon hearing this, the intelligence personnel immediately turned around and shouted to the signal personnel on the high platform. Shut down the formation. Upon hearing this, the signal personnel on the high platform immediately signaled to shut down the formation. The news quickly spread among the smoke dragon warship. The thunder cores inside the smoke dragon warships were extinguished, and the dark clouds in the sky stopped churning and began to disperse. As the dark clouds dispersed, the thunder pills in the hands of the players suddenly lost their previous power. They could not even destroy the warship's defense formation. This made the players feel terrible. It felt as though they had been suppressed for a long time and had finally accumulated enough rage to unleash an ultimate skill. However, they did not expect that the ultimate skill would end in a few seconds. It was not satisfying enough. At this moment, the massacre of the smoke dragon warships began again. Without the thunderstorm clouds, the efficiency of the smoke dragon warships destroying the players' warships was much slower, but the players also lost the capital to fight against the smoke dragon warship. At this point in the battle, the players' warships had lost more than 20,000 warships, while the smoke dragon warships had lost 32. The gap was huge. As the battle continued, the damage to the players' warships continued to increase, and 2 more smoke dragon warships were sunk. Although the results were impressive, the smoke dragon warships were not feeling good. At this moment, what he wanted the most was not to destroy the players' fleet, but to escape. The loss of dozens of warships could only be described as a heavy loss for the smoke dragon warship. The spiritual materials needed to build a Spectre warship were incomparably huge. Losing 34 warships in one go really pained the smoke dragon warship. In comparison, the players were very happy. They had thought that they would return empty-handed from this battle, but they did not expect to sink dozens of warships. They had made a killing. As for escaping, it was impossible. Fight until the last person. Then continue in a few days. If we don't destroy the players, what kind of evil force are we? Chapter 505. The battle lasted for 5 hours before it finally came to an end. Almost all the player warships were sunk, but Smoke Dragon was going crazy because he had lost 41 Smoke Dragon warships in this battle. He could not gather enough spiritual materials to build 1 Smoke Dragon warship in a year. The loss was so great that Smoke Dragon's body was trembling slightly. He took a deep breath and looked forward. There were less than 5,000 player warships left. Under the attack of the water giants, the damage of the player warships continued to increase. Attack! Attack! Smoke Dragon roared angrily. Smoke Dragon's fleet immediately spread out and attacked the remaining player warship. On the other hand, the players were very calm. In short, it was good that they made a profit. Perhaps to Smoke Dragon, the players' forces were already destroyed. After all, the loss was too great. But the players knew that this was just the beginning. There was still time. In the end, more than 5,000 player warships sank under the attack of the Smoke Dragon warship. Until the end, none of them escaped. When the battle ended, Smoke Dragon's expression was extremely ugly. He looked at the wrecked warships floating on the sea and immediately ordered, "Salvage the wrecks and see how much usable material there is." At this moment, he only wanted to make up for his losses. Soon, an intelligence officer hurried over. "Guild leader, the wrecks of the player clan's warships have all disappeared." "What did you say?" Smoke Dragon was in disbelief, thinking that he had heard wrong. "The wrecks of the player warships have all disappeared into thin air." The intelligence officer could not help but repeat. All disappeared." At this moment, Smoke Dragon's eyes widened. "You're telling me that the wrecks of more than 80,000 warships have all disappeared?" "Yes." The intelligence officer's face showed an awkward expression. Smoke Dragon immediately walked to the bow of the warship and looked toward the sea. The deep sea was filled with white waves, but the wrecks of the warships that floated on the surface of the sea had really disappeared. At this moment, Smoke Dragon's expression could only be described as dumbstruck. Meanwhile, the Sea King, who was hiding in the clouds and peeking below, was rolling on the floor with laughter. "Where did they go?" Smoke Dragon mumbled. "Guild leader, I think the player warships might be built with special materials that will dissolve in water after they are disassembled." The intelligence officer, who could not provide any useful information, could only give such a far-fetched explanation. "Melt your mother's head." The angry Smoke Dragon grabbed the intelligence officer's neck and threw him into the sea. "Find it for me. If you don't find it, don't come back." Looking at the empty sea, the intelligence personnel wanted to cry but had no tears. Where the hell were they supposed to find this? Watching the fleet of warships slowly leave, the intelligence personnel tried to dive into the water to search. However, the water was still empty, and only a few fish occasionally swam by. Although the player clan was annihilated in this battle, the Smoke Dragon was not happy at all. Instead, he was extremely annoyed. It could be said that this battle had caused Yen Long's mentality to completely explode. On the way back, the Smoke Dragon was still feeling extremely irritated after traveling for several hours. Although he was in the Underworld Merchant Guild and was a member of the War Merchant Group, this position required a corresponding level of strength to sit in. Who knew how many people were eyeing the power of the War Merchant Group? For him, this loss was equivalent to losing nearly 50 years of profit. Just as the Smoke Dragon was feeling annoyed, a figure leisurely floated past the bow of the warship. This person was chubby and carried a turtle shell on his back. He had a harmless look on his face. Although he was flying, his eyes were closed and his body was drooping as if he was sleeping. F***ck off. Yen Long, who was in a bad mood, immediately took action and fiercely slapped. Accompanied by the appearance of a blue stream of light, it quickly swept toward the person. Slap. At this time, the warship's protective shield suddenly popped up. The slap hit the protective shield and suddenly rebounded, hitting the Smoke Dragon's body and sending him flying backward, crashing into the mast. F***ck. Who the F***ck activated the protective shield? Are you a F***king pig? The Smoke Dragon stood up angrily and roared. The people on the warship standing on the high platform looked at each other, but no one answered. The Smoke Dragon glared at them fiercely, then looked at Dr. Hai again. His expression gradually became ferocious. Right now, he needed a target to vent his emotions. Thinking of this, the Smoke Dragon floated into the air and reached out to grab Dr. Hai. At this time, the warship's protective shield suddenly appeared again, and the Smoke Dragon who hit the protective shield was bounced back again. F***ck your mother, Who the F***ck activated it this time? The smoke dragon was so angry that he wanted to kill someone. Chairman, no one activated it. It automatically popped up. A member of the Smoke Dragon Chamber of Commerce, standing on the high platform, replied in a low voice. You. The smoke dragon took a deep breath and calmed his emotions. He planned to capture Dr. Hai first and then pursue this matter. This time, the smoke dragon floated into the air carefully, fearing that the warship's protective shield would automatically pop up. Fortunately, the protective shield did not appear this time. This made the smoke dragon heave a sigh of relief. Then, he once again grabbed Dr. Hai with a ferocious expression. However, just as he was about to grab the Zhonghai doctor, a ray of light swept over him and sent him flying. Which bastard activated the gilded cannon? The disheveled smoke dragon shouted angrily in the direction of the warship. The people on the warship below trembled and did not dare to answer. This was because no one was operating the warship now. Chairman, I think it's a misfire. At this time, one of them mustered up the courage to shout at the smoke dragon. I'm leaving, my ass. I'll deal with you guys later. The red-eyed smoke dragon did not believe it and turned his hand again to grab Dr. Hai. Just as he was about to grab Dr. Hai, he suddenly stopped and turned to look at the direction of the warship. Fortunately, there was no misfire this time. However, his eyes widened very quickly because all the other warships behind him had misfired. Beams of gilded fire cannonballs shot toward him like a crimson meteor shower. F***ck. The smoke dragon wanted to kill someone. At this moment, he even suspected that the members of the guild were plotting a rebellion behind his back and were preparing to assassinate him to take over. A mass misfire? This is too F***king fake. Thinking of this, the smoke dragon quickly turned his body and began to dodge the attack of the gilded cannon. Boom, boom, boom. Countless gilded fire cannonballs fell and flames splattered everywhere. Although he dodged all of them, the smoke dragon was still covered in dust. At this time, he turned to look at Dr. Hai. However, he was shocked to find out that Dr. Hai was still sleeping with his eyes closed under the intense bombardment of the cannonballs. It was as though none of the cannonballs had hit Dr. Hai and the aftershock did not hurt him at all. This is too lucky. The smoke dragon could not believe it. He turned to look at the members of the warship. Those members instinctively took a step back with innocent expressions on their faces. Although they wanted to explain that it was really a mass misfire this time, even they themselves felt that it was too F***king fake and that it was too F***king premeditated murder. After glaring at his subordinates fiercely, the smoke dragon turned to look at Dr. Hai again. This time, he did not choose to attack at close range. Instead, he waved his hand and created a distorted space. He did not believe that he could not kill this person. The distorted space slowly moved toward Dr. Hai under the control of the smoke dragon. A cruel smile appeared on the smoke dragon's face. He could almost see the scene of the distorted space tearing Dr. Hai apart. However, just as the distorted space was about to come into contact with Dr. Hai, the surface of the sea suddenly surged and a huge wave rose. Under the smoke dragon's astonished expression, a huge tail that was hundreds of meters long emerged from the water and swept him fiercely, sending him flying. A huge head emerged from the water. After letting out a roar, it spat out a string of bubbles and slowly sank into the water. The smoke dragon was seriously injured by this attack and flew far away. Finally, he fell into the water and slowly sank. It's so noisy, can't you let me sleep? At this time, Dr. Hai woke up and rubbed his sleepy eyes. He looked at the members of the Smoke Dragon Chamber of Commerce, who were standing on the warship's high platform not far away, and looked at the surface of the sea. After a while, he closed his eyes again and fell into a deep sleep. Chapter 506. Recently, two pieces of news from the Empty Sea region and the Kuelong Sea region had stirred up heated discussions among the various forces in the sea region. The first news came from Black Reef Island. The player clan was completely wiped out under the attack of the Smoke Dragon fleet. This news caused a huge uproar in these two seas. Many of the sea region factions were no longer as unfamiliar with the player clan as they were in the past. As their interactions with the player clan deepened, many of the sea region factions even felt that the player clan was a strong competitor for the future overlord of the sea region. He had incomparably great potential. Being destroyed in such a manner was beyond the expectations of many sea region forces. At that moment, the reputation of the Smoke Dragon Chamber of Commerce resounded throughout the two seas. This made the various forces, who were already afraid of them, realize how powerful the Smoke Dragon fleet was. But soon, another piece of news came out. The Smoke Dragon was severely injured and on the verge of death. No one knew where this news had come from, but the authenticity of it caused a heated discussion among the various sea region powers. In the beginning, many forces in the sea region were skeptical. After all, the Smoke Dragon was a powerhouse in the Ghost Emperor realm. How could he be seriously injured or even on the verge of death after a battle with the player clan? This could be seen from the damage suffered by the Smoke Dragon warship in this battle. If more than half of the Smoke Dragon warship had been destroyed after the battle, then the various forces could understand that the battle had been extremely intense. It was also understandable that the Smoke Dragon warship had been heavily injured. However, the Smoke Dragon fleet had only lost over 40 warships in this battle. It could be said to be a completely one-sided battle. How could the Smoke Dragon fleet be injured? The forces of the various seas only treated this as a rumor, and there were only a few who believed it. But a few days later, when it was time for the second gathering of the forces in the sea region, the Black Reef Island announced that the meeting would be postponed. The specific date was unknown. This announcement instantly made the various oceanic forces recall the rumors of Smoke Dragon being injured. In the past few days, not only did the Smoke Dragon not show up, but even the fleet that he led didn't go to the sea to investigate the sea plunder incident. Everything was very strange. Under such circumstances, many forces began to believe that Smoke Dragon was seriously injured and on the verge of death. Even if all the merchant associations on Black Reef Island tried to refute the rumor, no one would believe it without the appearance of the Smoke Dragon. Instead, they would suspect that the Smoke Dragon Merchant Association was trying to cover it up. As the saying goes, if you are not sick, you should take 2 steps. The appearance of the real person is more reliable than any other method of refuting rumors. Continuously refuting the rumors without any substantial response would only make people more suspicious. At this moment, the Smoke Dragon Trade Association was in great trouble. At this moment, inside Black Reef Island, Vice President Smoke Wolf stood outside the spirit cave where Smoke Dragon was recuperating, his face gloomy as he paced back and forth. At this moment, a merchant with a head full of white hair walked quickly from the side. Vice Guild Leader Smoke Wolf, what's the situation with Guild Leader Smoke Dragon? Everyone is talking about the Guild Leader being heavily injured. The situation is very bad for us. Guild Leader Black Reef, who leaked this information? Smoke Wolf asked the white-haired old man as he stood behind the white-haired old man. When the white-haired old man heard that, he shook his head. I don't know. After the fleet returned, this news appeared out of thin air on the various trading islands, and then spread to the two seas. Clearly, it was secretly done by some force. Damn it! Yanlang couldn't help but clench his fists. Not only did the fleet suffer huge losses in the battle with the player clan, but they also didn't expect the Smoke Dragon to be seriously injured by Tao Wu on the way back. If the crew hadn't rescued it in time and used a large amount of healing spiritual materials to stabilize its injuries, then brought it back to Black Reef Island for treatment, the Smoke Dragon might have been dead. Smoke Wolf, who was stationed on Black Reef Island at that time, couldn't help but be stunned when he heard the news. The first thing he did was to block the news of the Smoke Dragon's injury. Otherwise, the Smoke Dragon fleet would be in danger. Although the smoke dragon fleet was now the War Chamber of Commerce, no force dared to attack them. But the name of the War Chamber of Commerce was coveted by many forces. If the news of the fleet being damaged and the smoke dragon dying spread, the most direct impact would be that many forces would fight for the War Chamber of Commerce title of the smoke dragon fleet. Moreover, if this news spread to the upper echelons of the Netherworld Chamber of Commerce, they would also reconsider the smoke dragon fleet to see if they still had the qualifications to be the War Chamber of Commerce. Smoke Wolf didn't even dare to think of such consequences. If they lost the title of the War Chamber of Commerce, not to mention the huge annual loss of profits, just the chambers of commerce and sea forces they offended would be enough to kill them. Therefore, Smoke Wolf chose to block the news without hesitation. But he didn't expect that the news would still leak out and spread to the two seas in such a short time. Perhaps it wouldn't take long for the upper echelons of the Netherworld Chamber of Commerce to be spread by the chambers of commerce they offended. At this moment, Smoke Wolf and his subordinates were as anxious as ants on a hot pan. Not only did their attempts to refute the rumors not work, but it also led to worse consequences. Now that the smoke dragon was still unconscious, the morale of the entire fleet was low, and the situation was not optimistic. Not only did the battle with the player clan not bring them the joy of victory, but the specific losses could no longer be described as huge. At this moment, Smoke Wolf only hoped that his brother, Smoke Dragon, would recover from his injuries quickly, so that he could personally refute the rumors and suppress the worsening situation. But what they didn't expect was yet to come. Because all the members of their enemy, the player clan, had been resurrected at the Mansion of the Dead in full health. After this battle, the player clan also saw the many shortcomings on their side. Then, the direction of the discussion on the forum changed because the players realized how much of a disadvantage they had in a head-on battle with the Smoke Dragon fleet. As long as Smoke Dragon was around, the Neptune's pardon in his hands was simply a divine weapon of naval warfare, and the players had no power to resist at all. This time, they mainly relied on the Thunder Pellet to attract the lightning and blow up dozens of Smoke Dragon warship. Otherwise, the outcome could only be described as tragic, and it would be a complete formality. After this, the players didn't even need to think to know that Smoke Dragon would definitely not activate the Thunderstorm Cloud Matrix when fighting them in the future. Therefore, a new strategy was very important. However, the players' mentality was still very good. After all, they were players. Their enemies came wave after wave, but they still stood firm. Just as the players were discussing how to continue to sanction the Smoke Dragon Merchant Association, a player made a suggestion. This suggestion had a unique thought circuit, and it caused a heated discussion among the players. When I was researching forging skills recently, I thought of an advanced ability in forging, disassembly and decomposition. I think this ability will definitely be useful in this battle. Author, Lin Tai Content. Let me first introduce myself. I am a lifestyle player in the Mansion of the Dead, and my sub-profession is a forging master. 3 days ago, the leader of the Dark Bloodlines Guild asked me to forge a batch of naval warfare tools. At that time, I accepted this task, and then started to forge the tools according to the blueprint. However, during the forging process, due to a mistake during the casting process, many parts that were supposed to be assembled were smelted together. I really want to kill my stupid son. As a result, all the parts were scrapped. Since the spiritual iron and spiritual materials were all provided by the Dark Bloodlines Guild, the loss was undoubtedly very huge. At that time, I wanted to salvage the situation and see if I could disassemble these smelted parts. For this reason, I specifically looked for Master Tong Gua and consulted him. Then, Master Tong Gua told me about an advanced ability for forging masters, disassembly and decomposition. In order to recover the loss, I stayed in the Mansion of the Dead library for a few days to read up on the specific principles and operating methods of disassembly and decomposition. After that, I tried repeatedly during which several assembled parts were scrapped. However, I finally succeeded. I really disassembled all the melted parts of the machine. Therefore, I suddenly thought, since the smoke dragon warship is so hard that we can't do anything about it, can we sneak in and disassemble the parts of their warship? The most important thing is that we can use the parts that we dismantled. Although the success rate is very low, and it requires excellent skills, there are so many of us players. It shouldn't be a problem to disassemble one warship a day, right? This is my suggestion. Perhaps everyone can give it a try. Another thing to mention, the technique of disassembly and decomposition is not easy to master, and the success rate is not high. However, don't be afraid of a target without practice. The Smoke Dragon warship is waiting for you. Forum, A_large_wolf dog, dumbfounded dog. You can do that? Now that you mention it, I can almost see the disassembly team on the way. Captain of the Demolition Officers. I heard that you guys are calling for our demolition club. Do you want to join us? Tonggua's arrogant face, JPG, surely _the strongest. What the F*** CK Uncle Lin Tai is awesome. Disassembly tactics? If we don't fight head-on, we'll disassemble all their warships? C King's shocked face. JPG, assassin_creed, 666. After reading Uncle Lin Tai's post, I can almost see the members of the Smoke Dragon Merchant Association doubting their lives after waking up from a nap. Exciting, laughing emoji, dogball_taba. This is too cruel, but I like it. Chana's grin emoji. Lin Tai's suggestion could be said to be ingenious. All the players were thinking about how to rely on tactics or improve their strength to defeat the Smoke Dragon Merchant Association head-on. Lin Tai's suggestion caught many of the players off guard. It was unexpected. However, when they thought about it carefully, they realized that it did make sense. Moreover, the profession of blacksmith was the only profession in the entire server that had no limit and was open to all players. In other words, every player could actually give it a try. In an instant, the Mansion of the Dead's library was flooded with people. The players enthusiastically participated and began to study the branch of blacksmith's ability, disassembly and decomposition. Even Lu Wu, who was behind the scenes, did not expect the players' actions. According to Bailey, the players' idea was totally feasible. Although the success rate was very low, even a Spectre warship like the Smoke Dragon warship could not handle the number of players. There would always be a few successful cases among the attempts. As long as they were successful, the Smoke Dragon Merchant Association would suffer a huge loss. The players' current attempt had once again confirmed Lu Wu's original idea. The players' potential was limitless. They could always find a way to defeat their enemies. Just like the Mahogany House building battle during the invasion of the evil spirits, this time, the players' battle tactics were on the scene again. Due to the huge number of players entering the library during this period, Lu Wu had decisively expanded the area of the folded space in the library so that the players would not be unable to study. Soon, the strategy to learn disassembly and decomposition was posted on the forum by Lin Tai, who was one step ahead. The learning craze spread again. Although it was painful to learn, every Battle Royale player had a sense of superiority. After all, no other game could be as hardcore as Battle Royale. As for learning, the players had also changed from being surprised at the beginning to getting used to it. This was also what Lu Wu wanted to see. His Calamity army was growing. Chapter 507. Kuelong Ocean, Black Reef Island. Early in the morning, Yen Wolf, who hadn't slept well all night, walked to the coast. He was extremely frustrated. Too many things had happened recently. The Smoke Dragon Merchant Association was in a great crisis. If they couldn't get through it, they would be completely destroyed. When he arrived at the coast, the sun was just rising. Under the red sun, the Smoke Dragon fleet was like a group of majestic giants, lying on the coast. Seeing this, Yen Wolf couldn't help but sigh. Although many things had happened, fortunately there was still this fleet. No matter what, they still had a chance. Thinking of this, Yen Wolf continued to walk forward and began to patrol the warships. At this moment, his expression suddenly froze. Not far away, the spot where warship 176 was docked was now empty. This scene shocked Yen Wolf. He immediately floated into the air and began to carefully examine the warships below. However, to his surprise, Battleship 176 had really disappeared. "Where's the crew on duty?" Yen Wolf couldn't help but roar. No one responded. Just when Yen Wolf was about to roar again, he suddenly noticed that there seemed to be a figure underwater where warship 176 was docked. He immediately flashed and scooped up the figure from the water. Woo 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 woo. At this moment, the crew on duty, who had been tied up for a night, began to sob in grief and indignation. Yen Wolf's expression was gloomy. He pulled the seaweed stuffed in his mouth and shouted angrily, "What the hell happened? Vice President, warship 176 was stolen," the crew on duty said with a sad face. Slap. Yen Wolf slapped his face and shouted angrily, "What the hell is going on? Without the exclusive seal of the Smoke Dragon Guild, who could drive the warship? Are you King crazy?" Yen Wolf was obviously furious. He tightened his grip on his subordinate's hand. The subordinate was so scared that his face turned pale. "Vice President, they didn't drive it. They directly dismantled warship 176. The subordinate quickly answered in order to survive. Dismantled? Yen Wolf almost couldn't help but pinch his subordinate to death. This was even more unreliable than driving the warship away. After all, when the entire Spectre warship was built, all the materials were melted together. How could it be dismantled? Tell me the details. Yen Wolf took a deep breath to calm himself down and asked with widened eyes. Upon hearing this, the member of the Smoke Dragon Chamber of Commerce quickly nodded. "Vice President, I was on night duty last night. At that time, I stayed on the main ship to keep watch, but late at night, I heard knocking sounds coming from nearby. At that time, I was very puzzled, so I followed the sound. In the end, I found many black shadows lurking under Battleship 176, holding something that I don't know what, and they were knocking at Battleship 173. There were already many holes on Battleship 173, and these holes didn't seem to be damaged, but more like missing parts, as if a part of it was missing. At that time, I was very scared and was about to return to the main ship to sound the alarm, but I saw two black shadows appear in front of me, and then my vision went black. When I woke up, I found myself underwater. Mother***, since you noticed something, why didn't you sound the alarm earlier?" When Yen Lang heard this, he couldn't help but slap him again. "Vice President, I felt that in this sea area no one would dare to harm us. At that time, I thought it was just some sea beast that made the noise, and by the time I realized something was wrong, it was already too late," the member said with a sad face. Upon hearing this, Yen Lang threw the member into the water, then turned his head to look at the original location of Battleship 173, and his face was extremely gloomy. After being in various sea areas for so many years, this was the first time that Yen Lang heard of someone stealing a battleship. In fact, it wasn't that they didn't have security measures for the battleship. First of all, every day there would be a member of the Ghost Commander level or above on the main ship as a lookout, looking after all the battleships, and could send a signal to inform the other members if anything happened. Secondly, every member on duty would drink a soul fire before performing a night watch. As long as the soul lamp left on the island was extinguished, all the members sleeping on the island would also receive a notification. Most importantly, these battleships had Yen Lang's soul imprint. Without the life imprint given by President Yen Lang, it was impossible to operate them, let alone drive them away. Moreover, this was the Black Reef Island, the temporary territory of the Smoke Dragon fleet. Who would dare to be presumptuous here? With so many safeguards, Yen Lang did not even think that something would go wrong with the battleship. However, he did not expect that these thieves would kidnap the members on duty, but did not kill them. Then, they stole Battleship 176 by dismantling it. Although Yen Lang did not understand how these thieves managed to dismantle the Smoke Dragon battleship that had already been melted into one. However, in Yen Lang's opinion, this method was simply too despicable and shameless. At this moment, Yen Lang was so angry that his hair stood on end. It was a troubled time now, and the loss of a battleship was not a small matter. It really made him angry. Pass down my order. From tonight onwards, all members of the Chamber of Commerce are to spend the night on the battleship. Looking at the timid subordinate below, Yen Lang instantly glared and rebuked him. Yes, I'll go right now. The subordinate was relieved and quickly swam towards the shore. From this day onwards, all members of the Smoke Dragon fleet lost the opportunity to rest on the island, and all moved to the battleship. These battleships originally had rooms specially for resting and sleeping. However, the living environment was obviously incomparable to that on the shore. Not only was the environment cramped, but it was also very humid inside. At night, the waves would rise and fall. Although there was a stabilizing function, one would still feel very uncomfortable after staying for a long time. However, none of the members of the Chamber of Commerce dared to object to Yen Lang's decision. This was a critical period, and all the members of the Smoke Dragon fleet knew that if they could not survive this time, the Smoke Dragon fleet would be finished. As members of the Smoke Dragon fleet, they would also be finished. After that, the entire Smoke Dragon fleet entered a state of alert. Even Yen Lang personally guarded the fleet every night. This was because he clearly knew that no accidents could happen before the Smoke Dragon fleet woke up. Otherwise, the situation would continue to worsen, and the future of the Smoke Dragon fleet would be worrying. However, his thinking was still too naive. That night, countless black shadows quietly dived towards the Smoke Dragon fleet from underwater. The thieving began once more. That night, all the members of the Smoke Dragon fleet were awakened by the knocking sound. All of them immediately rushed out of the battleship to check, and to their surprise, they discovered that the attackers this time were actually the player clan. Therefore, a massacre was unavoidable. The strength of the players was obviously incomparable to that of the members of the Smoke Dragon fleet, and they were all quickly killed. However, to their surprise, just as they returned to the battleship, before they could close their eyes, another wave of black-clothed people sneaked in under the cover of the night. Ding ding dang dang, the knocking sounds rang out again. Having no choice, the members of the Smoke Dragon fleet could only hastily face the enemies again, and the massacre began again. However, all of this was just the beginning. That night, the members of the Smoke Dragon fleet were tortured to the point of insanity. Wave after wave of thieves seemed to be endless. Every time they were about to go to sleep, these thieves would come. For a whole night, even the Smoke Dragon fleet couldn't count how many players they had killed. In the end, they had no choice but to turn on the battleship's protective shield that night, and only then did they successfully fall asleep. However, the next night, the players came again. Perseverance was like dripping water wearing away a stone. The players used their actions to perfectly illustrate this concept. Unless the Smoke Dragon fleet could turn on its protective shield 24 hours a day, regardless of energy consumption, the players would dare to come up and hammer a few times. These days, both the members of the Smoke Dragon fleet and the members of the Chamber of Commerce gradually looked haggard. Because in the following days, the thieves of the player clan dared to come openly during the day. Seeing the player clan, the Smoke Dragon fleet went from anger to helplessness to fear. The journey in its heart was extremely tortuous. When it came to torturing the enemy, the players were excellent. After all, the number of players was there. As long as 1/3 of the players went to harass them every day, the Smoke Dragon fleet would feel extremely uncomfortable. On the player forum, the disassembled parts of the Smoke Dragon warship, which were above level 15, were being sold at high prices, attracting the envy of many players. These disassembled parts were devoured by the players' warships, and the experience gained was unimaginable. It could be said that all the major guilds wanted to buy them. There would always be more tycoons in a war than rare items, and the supply of these parts soon exceeded the demand. Although the Smoke Dragon Chamber of Commerce's tight security made it much more difficult to steal warship parts, the players were still having fun. After all, the profits were too great. Whether they sold it or used it themselves, it was a guaranteed profit. Therefore, the harassment did not decrease, but became even more intense. At first, they ambushed under the cover of the night, but now, the players were simply robbing in the open. They headed to Black Reef Island 24 hours a day, swung their hammers when they arrived, and continued after 3 hours if they died. Smoke Dragon Fleet could only lead the fleet to fight. After half a month, Smoke Dragon Fleet and the fleet had lost a lot of weight, and their mental state was extremely poor. It wasn't that they didn't think of leaving Black Reef Island and escaping. However, the Smoke Dragon Fleet was still recovering in the Spirit Cave inside Black Reef Island. How could Smoke Dragon Fleet feel at ease leaving just like that? If anything happened to the Smoke Dragon Fleet, the Smoke Dragon Fleet could immediately disband. Otherwise, they would have to face the suppression of the major factions. Moreover, these Smoke Dragon warships were all bound to the Smoke Dragon Fleet's soul. They had the seal bestowed by the Smoke Dragon and could operate the warship, but they weren't the warship's master. It could be said that they were now in a dilemma. Faced with the harassment of the players, they could only endure, but couldn't retreat. As the players' open robbery became more and more intense, it also attracted the attention of the major factions in the sea. The news that the player clan hadn't been destroyed instantly spread across the two seas. It was also because of the player clan's locust-like behavior. Once again, the players were crowned as the top gangster leader faction in the two seas. However, under such circumstances, the Smoke Dragon still didn't appear, which caused the major factions to speculate. At this moment, the news that the Smoke Dragon was heavily injured, or even on the verge of death, seemed to be confirmed. Therefore, the thing that Smoke Dragon was most worried about happened. 2 letters departed from Xinmo Island, carried by He Sui, the liege of the Mu Te Sea Nation, to the Underworld Sea Merchant Alliance branch in the soul-devouring ocean. One of them was detailed explanation of the Smoke Dragon Fleet's combat power, which described the Smoke Dragon Fleet's current combat power. The other was War Merchant's application letter. At this moment, the mastermind who had been stabbing them in the back finally made his move. The Smoke Dragon Fleet's current situation was exactly what he wanted to see. As long as he grasped this opportunity, he could soar to the sky. Chapter 508. For half a month, they went from being sneaky to being open and aboveboard. The mentality of the players gradually changed as well. In order to break down the Smoke Dragon warships for high-grade parts, the players racked their brains. After all, the benefits were huge. For most players, it was also an opportunity. Therefore, dismantling ships became a new channel for the players to carry bricks. Although this method of carrying bricks was more dangerous than cutting trees, fishing, and farming monsters, the benefits were incomparable to those of the previous methods. There was even a player in the forum who specially calculated the data and published a comparison post. In the post, the player used the data to explain why pirate ships were more profitable than activities such as cutting trees and fishing. This further aroused the player's passion for pirate ships. As a result, the Smoke Dragon Chamber of Commerce suffered unspeakably. At this moment, on Black Reef Island, Smoke Wolf sat on the ground with a haggard look after defeating another wave of player clans. His eyes were bloodshot, and his hair was disheveled. He looked at the calm sea with lingering fear. After making sure there were no players, Smoke Wolf sighed and turned to his subordinate beside him. "Get me the intelligence officer." When the subordinate heard this, he looked embarrassed. Vice President, the intelligence officer was thrown into the sea by the President. "He's probably still looking for the wreckage of the warship left behind in the void ocean," Smoke Wolf was speechless. Then you go. I'll assign you a warship with 30 people. Go to the soul-devouring sea and ask for reinforcements from the Acheron Chamber of Commerce branch. Vice President, do we really need to ask for reinforcements? The President. Before the subordinate could finish, Smoke Wolf interrupted him with a wave of his hand. Go. I'll explain to the President when he wakes up. Although the subordinate had many doubts, he nodded and immediately turned to leave. After the subordinate left, Smoke Wolf looked exhausted. It wasn't that he didn't want to hold on, but he knew that if this went on, the Smoke Dragon fleet wouldn't last until Smoke Dragon woke up. He clearly saw the player clan's perseverance in the past few days. Under the crazy harassment, they didn't even have time to rest. They truly attacked 24 hours a day. From the initial anger to now, Smoke Wolf felt like he was about to vomit from all the killing. Smoke Wolf was sure that he had killed more enemies in the past half a month than he had in the past half a month after living for nearly 10,000 years. As a result, Smoke Wolf felt disgusted whenever he saw the player clan. Even though he had the strength of a ghost king and his body could still withstand it, his spirit could not. If it was a normal battle in the sea, even if his fleet was damaged, he would grit his teeth and fight on. This was because asking for help from the Underworld Merchant Guild meant that they would not be able to complete the task given by their superiors. As the War Chamber of Commerce, they were supposed to help the Netherworld Chamber of Commerce deal with all sorts of problems. If they couldn't even do this, the Netherworld Chamber of Commerce would reconsider their qualifications as a War Chamber of Commerce. Now that the Smoke Dragon was heavily injured and the fleet had lost a lot, the test at this time was fatal. The Smoke Wolf clearly knew that under this situation, the possibility of them passing the test was very low. However, if they didn't ask for reinforcements, the Smoke Dragon fleet would still be in great danger under the harassment of the player clan. In the past half a month, 7 warships had been destroyed, and the remaining warships had more or less suffered damage. Every time the players arrived, they would devour the warships like locusts. They were crazy to the point that they didn't care about their lives. They were exhausted from all the killing. If this continued, the Smoke Wolf even suspected that within a few months, this fleet would no longer exist under the devouring of the player clan. Most importantly, if he could see results from killing the player clan, he would still be able to hold on. However, the problem was that it had been more than half a month. They had killed wave after wave, but the number of attacking player clan did not decrease at all. Instead, it was increasing. This was also the reason why the Smoke Wolf felt like breaking down. If it wasn't because of this, he wouldn't have clenched his teeth and asked for reinforcements. The player clan did not oppress them in terms of strength, but it brought them mental devastation. This was far more difficult for the Smoke Wolf to deal with than the oppression of strength. Right now, the Smoke Wolf didn't know how long he could hold on. However, the Smoke Dragon was still unconscious. He had no other choice but to hold on. After the warship requesting for reinforcements sailed away from the coast, the Smoke Wolf sighed again. He still remembered clearly that when the 2 brothers received the mission to investigate the plunder incident in the Kuelong Ocean, they were excited. Because every time they went out on a mission, there would be huge profits to be reaped. And that was exactly what they did. The major chambers of commerce continuously sent over spiritual materials and resources, allowing them to make a lot of money. However, they didn't expect to fall into the hands of the player clan. After the battle at the Void Ocean, the Smoke Dragon fleet had suffered a great loss. At this moment, the sirens suddenly sounded. Then, the Smoke Wolf heard a shout. The player clan is here. Prepare for battle. Prepare for battle. Blarg, the Smoke Wolf couldn't help but retch. However, he had to stand up, pick up the sword beside him again, and lead the members of the Chamber of Commerce to kill the incoming player clan, the nibbling group. In fact, the players didn't want to force others to kill and then break them down. In fact, the players felt that this could be resolved through negotiation. For example, the Smoke Wolf gave up on intercepting them and let them destroy the ships and decompose the parts in peace. Then, everyone could coexist peacefully. This was also mentioned to the Smoke Wolf by some dumb players. However, the Smoke Wolf's answer was a stab in the head. Therefore, the negotiation broke down, and the players could only continue to steal the ships in this way. In fact, to most of the players, they were suffering because the difficulty of this game was too high. In order to steal the parts of the Smoke Dragon warship, most of the players died again and again. 3 hours passed, and another 3 hours passed. In the end, most of the players didn't even manage to decompose a single warship part. This group of players had a lot of resentment. They felt that their luck was terrible and they were killed every time. They had enough of these days. However, every time they saw on the forum that the stolen parts of the Smoke Dragon warship were bought by the large guilds at a high price, the guilds exchanged them for a set of high-level equipment. How could they not be jealous? Obviously, they were envious, jealous, and even cursed. Take a spear hit in their hearts. However, they were unwilling to give up. What if they succeeded the next time? Wouldn't it be a huge loss if they gave up halfway? Therefore, they could only persuade themselves that they would succeed the next time and continue to kill. They wanted to be lucky, once in the process of destroying the ships, and then rise to fame. Most of the unsuccessful gamers had this thought in mind and believed that perseverance would lead to victory. Now, when the gamers saw Smoke Wolf, they had a headache. They felt that he was a malignant tumor. He kept increasing the difficulty of carrying brick. They couldn't stand him. However, they couldn't defeat him and could only use their lives to destroy the ship. This process was like a card drawing game. If they didn't succeed, there was a high chance that they would be killed. The next card drawing would be 3 hours later. In fact, the gamers were suffering, but Smoke Wolf was in more pain. Both sides were torturing each other. One side was fighting for benefits, while the other side was protecting their own benefit. They gritted their teeth in pain and persevered. According to a gamer, he was fighting for 24 hours a day, every 3 hours, and he died at least 5 times a day. Do you think he was feeling good? Fortunately, while the gamers were in pain, there were motivating rewards. At least they had something to look forward to, which was their source of motivation. In comparison, Smoke Wolf's suffering was more than 100 times that of the gamers. It was so unbearable that he was on the verge of collapse. Not only were there no benefits, but the warships were destroyed every day. The worst thing was that the player clan couldn't be killed. After persevering for 3 days, Smoke Wolf felt like he was in a trance. He was considered lucky because some of the crew members were tortured to insanity. After killing a wave of player clan members, they continued to brandish their weapons and shout, "Kill, kill, kill, kill." They had fallen into a state of madness and had completely collapsed. Faced with such a situation, Smoke Wolf was at a loss. He thought of trying to motivate the members of the Chamber of Commerce and get them to persevere a little longer. But in reality, he couldn't say any words of encouragement because he himself was on the verge of collapse. He couldn't squeeze anything out of his mind, just like a ball of paste. Even if he closed his eyes and wanted to rest for a while, the scene of the player clan's attack would suddenly appear in his mind. He would wake up with a start, grab his sword, and rush forward to fight. It became a conditioned reflex, so practiced that Smoke Wolf felt sorry for himself. For the past few days, Smoke Wolf looked forward to the arrival of reinforcements every day so that they could have a good rest, even if it was half a day, or even an hour. He couldn't stand the days of fear any longer. "Guild Master!" At this moment, a shout came, and Smoke Wolf jumped up reflexively. "Guild Master, someone committed suicide!" Clatter! His sword fell on the deck. Smoke Wolf's bloodshot face showed a dull expression. He turned to look at his subordinate. "Don't report such things to me in the future." After saying that, he fell to the ground again and looked at the blue sky with listless eyes, cherishing the short rest. "Guild Master!" At this moment, Another shout made Smoke Wolf grab the sword beside him reflexively and jump up. Guild Master, there's a ship in the distance. It's a warship that was sent out to request reinforcement. The reinforcements are here. The reinforcements are here. This shout was like a cardiac stimulant, making all the members of the Smoke Dragon Chamber of Commerce, who were on the verge of collapse, cry tears of joy. The dull and oppressive atmosphere was broken at this moment, and all the members of the Smoke Dragon Chamber of Commerce couldn't help but cheer. Many people shed tears on the spot, and even Smoke Wolf's eyes were moist. They had waited for this moment for far too long, and the reinforcements were the motivation for them to persevere until now. Although the process was extremely difficult and torturous, they managed to persevere until this moment. They were finally free. Ah! Smoke Wolf's long hair fluttered in the wind. He raised his sword and couldn't help but howl at the sea. After fighting in the sea for so many years, none of the members of the Smoke Dragon Chamber of Commerce expected that they would be so excited for reinforcements. Thinking back to the most dangerous period in the past, when they defeated enemies several times their number, they were not as excited as they were now. The dark and torturous days were finally over. However, as the battleships approached, the smile on Smoke Wolf's face suddenly froze. Behind the battleships that they sent out for reinforcements, the clear word Mu-Te hung high on the mast of the main ship, and a group of blue battleships with metallic luster followed closely behind. Smoke Wolf knew all the war chambers in the nearby sea area and had contact with them before. However, there was no Mu-Te Chamber of Commerce among these war chambers, and the only Mu-Te Chamber of Commerce they knew was the Mu-Te Sea Nation, which was the force that the Sea King was in. As the battleships approached, a figure suddenly leaped from the main ship. A black full moon appeared between the person's eyebrows, and the person quickly flew toward the Smoke Dragon Chamber of Commerce. Vice Guild Master, should we activate the protective shield? A subordinate asked quickly. No need, wait for him, Smoke Wolf said with a gloomy face. The Sea King's figure approached at this moment and landed on the front deck. Sea King, what are you doing here? Smoke Wolf immediately asked in a deep voice. Looking at the disheveled Smoke Wolf, a smile appeared on the Sea King's face. Then, he took out a scroll from his halo. Why do you think I'm here? Chapter 509. Seeing the scroll in the Sea King's hand, Yen Lang's expression suddenly changed. Sea God's Pardon. That's right, it's the Sea God's Pardon. However, this one hasn't been inscribed with any Sea God runes, so it's not the completed Sea God's Pardon. Therefore, I still need to borrow something from your Chamber of Commerce to perfect it. Sea King, what do you mean? Yen Lang asked with a pale face. What do you think? Don't tell me you still don't understand? The Sea King smiled. Actually, when he saw the Sea King take out the Neptune's pardon, Yen Lang already knew that the Sea King must have gone to the Underworld Chamber of Commerce's Alliance branch. Otherwise, how could the Neptune's pardon scroll appear in his hands? This was because the Sea God's Pardon was the symbol of the War Chamber of Commerce. The Underworld Merchant Guild branch in the Devouring Sea controlled a total of 10 War Merchant Guild. In other words, there were only 10 Neptune's Pardon scrolls. The scroll in the Sea King's hand was blank, so it was obvious that he wanted to take the scroll from the Smoke Dragon Chamber of Commerce and complete it. You're courting death. Sea King, with your strength, you are not worthy of the name of the War Chamber of Commerce. Do you really think that the Smoke Dragon Chamber of Commerce is useless? Yen Lang suddenly shouted angrily, and he could not help but tighten his grip on the saber in his hand. Don't get agitated. Whether I'm worthy or not isn't up to you, nor is it up to me. It's up to this person. As soon as the Sea King finished speaking, a black shadow slowly appeared beside him. This figure was shrouded in shadows, appearing illusory yet real at the same time, drifting erratically. Seeing this figure, Yen Lang's expression became even uglier. He immediately lowered his head and said respectfully to the figure, Elder Ing, why have you come? The branch president has ordered us to come and check on the situation. At the same time, we will examine the qualifications of the nuclear war chamber of commerce. Hearing this, the Smoke Wolf was terrified. Originally, it should have been the other war merchant groups that came to request for help. Although they would also be examined in the end, that was only after the supporting war merchant groups had dealt with the matter with them, and then the examining elder would come and examine them. However, Smoke Dragon would have woken up by then, and they would still have a chance to salvage the situation. However, Elder Ing had come at this time, when the Smoke Dragon Merchant Association was in the worst possible situation, which was completely out of Yen Lang's expectations. At this moment, he had a bad feeling. Looking at Yen Lang, who was forcing himself to smile in front of Elder Ing, the Sea King could not help but laugh. He had been planning this move ever since Smoke Dragon offended the Player Clan. Sending his subordinates to inform the Player Clan of the Smoke Dragon's attack was the first step in his plan. This was because the Sea King knew that the Player Clan was not a force that could be exterminated so easily. When both sides were heavily injured, there would definitely be a fisherman who would benefit from it, and he wanted to be the fisherman. Based on his understanding of the Player Clan and the Smoke Dragon Chamber of Commerce, the Smoke Dragon Chamber of Commerce would definitely suffer huge losses. Therefore, the Sea King had been waiting for the right time. Originally, he thought that the war between the Smoke Dragon Chamber of Commerce and the Player Clan would last a long time, and in this naval battle, the Smoke Dragon Chamber of Commerce's strength would gradually be depleted until it was impossible to recover. What the Sea King didn't expect was that everything would go surprisingly smoothly. As a core member of the Smoke Dragon Merchant Guild, Smoke Dragon was actually seriously injured and entered a state of near death. When the Sea King, who was hiding above the clouds, saw the Smoke Dragon being slapped into the water by Tao Wu, his excitement was indescribable, because this meant that the time was ripe. Subsequently, the Black Reef Island began to seal off the news of Yen Long's injury. However, the news still spread across the two seas and was known by various forces. Naturally, this was also his doing. After that, he sent his subordinate, He Sui, to the Underworld Chamber of Commerce's branch in the Soul-Devouring Sea to report the situation of the Smoke Dragon Chamber of Commerce and his own forces. He also applied to take over the War Chamber of Commerce's rights from the Smoke Dragon Chamber of Commerce. After knowing the situation, the person in charge of the Underworld Chamber of Commerce's branch agreed to re-examine the Smoke Dragon Chamber of Commerce's strength, but did not approve the Sea King's application to take over the War Chamber of Commerce's rights. This was because they needed to further examine whether the forces owned by the Sea King were qualified. And that was why Elder Ing came. Firstly, to examine the Sea King's forces. Secondly, to examine the current situation of the Smoke Dragon Chamber of Commerce to see if they were qualified to continue holding the rights to the War Chamber of Commerce. After arriving at the Kuelong Sea, Elder Ing first went to the Shinma Island where the Sea King was. After the examination, he learned that the Sea King's strength had reached the Ghost Emperor realm. He immediately bestowed the Sea God's Pardon White Scroll to the Sea King. After that, he went to the Black Reef Island with the Sea King. This time, he wanted to examine the Smoke Dragon Chamber of Commerce. Looking at the disheveled Smoke Wolf with bloodshot eyes, Elder Ying's hoarse voice was heard. "Smoke Wolf, what happened to you?" When Yen Wolf heard this, he did not dare to be negligent because he knew that the future of the Chamber of Commerce was now in the hands of Elder Ing. He quickly lowered his head and replied respectfully, "Elder Ing, there was an invasion just now and a battle broke out between us. That's why we're in such a sorry state, please forgive me." "Oh? What kind of enemy made you look so sorry?" Elder Ing could not help but ask. "It's just a group of thieves. Elder Ing need not worry. Our Smoke Dragon Chamber of Commerce can handle it." Yen Wolf quickly replied, afraid that Elder Ing would doubt the strength of their Chamber of Commerce. When Elder Ing heard this, he nodded. "Where's Yen Dragon? Let him come and see me." Hearing Elder Ing calling for Yen Dragon, Yen Wolf knew that the worst situation had come. But he also knew that at this moment, he could not hide even if he wanted to. President Yen Dragon is injured and is currently recuperating in the spiritual cave on the island. Bring me there. Elder Ying's hoarse voice was heard again. Yes, I'll bring you there now. In the face of Elder Ying's request, Yen Wolf did not dare to refuse and could only grit his teeth and agree. Then he turned to look at his subordinates and said, "You guys continue to stay here, I'll bring Elder Ying to see the president." After giving the order, Yen Wolf's figure floated up and shot towards the Black Reef Island. When Sea King and Elder Ying saw this, they immediately followed. All the way to the spiritual cave inside the Black Reef Island, Yen Wolf's figure slowed down and descended. After he landed, the figures of Elder Ying and Sea King followed. Elder Ying, the president is inside. After Yen Wolf finished speaking, he strode into the spiritual cave. The Sea King and Elder Ying immediately followed. This spiritual cave was where the Black Reef Chamber of Commerce stored spiritual materials and all kinds of treasures. The rock walls were inlaid with all kinds of precious pearls that sealed spiritual energy. The inside was filled with medicinal fragrance and abundant spiritual energy, forming white and light green clouds that were visible to the naked eye. At this moment, the seriously injured Yen Dragon was lying quietly on a stone platform inside the spiritual cave. The spiritual fog around him was the thickest in the entire spiritual cave. The white and light green fog enveloped him and expanded as he breathed. At this moment, Elder Ying's figure flashed and appeared in front of Yen Dragon. He pressed his hand on his chest. Suddenly, a thick black fog emerged from Elder Ying's hand and slowly seeped into Yen Dragon's body to investigate the internal condition of his body. After a moment of silence, Elder Ying withdrew his hand and turned to look at Yen Wolf. Who did this to him? Yen Wolf did not dare to hide and immediately answered, "The spirit of the void ocean, Tao Wu." How did he offend the spirit of the sea? Hearing this, Elder Ying could not help but frown. Elder Ying, it's not that the president offended the spirit of the sea, but Tao Wu happened to pass by and when he turned over, his tail hit the president. It's really a coincidence. Hearing that, Elder Ying nodded his head. At first, he thought that Yen Dragon Chamber of Commerce offending the spirit of the sea was a troublesome matter for him and the Acheron Chamber of Commerce behind him. After knowing that it was just a coincidence, he was no longer worried and said, "Yen Wolf, you two brothers have been with us for 400 years, right?" "Yes, the president and I have been with the Acheron Chamber of Commerce for more than 400 years. Do you know that the Yen Dragon Chamber of Commerce has actually suppressed many sea merchants in private and even directly asked for benefits? We all know about this." Elder Ying's words caused Yen Wolf's expression to change. Before he could answer, Elder Ying continued to speak. "In fact, every war chamber of commerce does this more or less. We can't be bothered because we know that every war chamber of commerce is ambitious and wants to improve. You even have the ambition to enter the central ocean of the netherworld. Therefore, as long as your actions do not cross the line, we will never pursue it. Moreover, you are also very smart and know your limits. Therefore, we always turn a blind eye to it and do not pursue it." Hearing this, Yen Wolf's tense heart immediately relaxed and he felt lucky to have escaped death. However, you must also understand the purpose of the War Chamber of Commerce's existence. Having ambition is a good thing. It will help you improve, but this also requires sufficient strength to match. The current strength of the Yen Dragon Chamber of Commerce seems to be somewhat inconsistent with the War Chamber of Commerce. Elder Ying, give us a chance. As long as the president wakes up, the Yen Dragon Chamber of Commerce's strength will still be enough to face any challenges and missions issued by the Chamber of Commerce. Yen Wolf quickly said, "The opportunity is not given by me, but earned through strength. The current situation of the Yen Dragon Chamber of Commerce does not meet the requirements of the War Chamber of Commerce," Elder Ying said with a sigh. "Elder Ying, even if the Yen Dragon Chamber of Commerce does not meet the requirements, what right does the Sea King have? At this time, Yen Wolf looked at the Sea King, who was standing aside angrily. I have investigated his situation. As a war chamber of commerce, the president must have the combat strength of a ghost emperor or above. He meets the requirement. I have also checked the forces under him, and they also meet the requirement. How is that possible? Even if he has the strength of a ghost emperor, his Mu-Tai-Si nation can't even compare to the Langia Island coalition force. How can he compete with the Yen Dragon fleet? If we fight, the Yen Dragon fleet can easily destroy his forces. Hearing this, Yen Wolf's face was full of disbelief. I'm sorry. Recently, the national strength has suddenly increased, and we have obtained the Nether Sea Nation's stone statue army. I'm really sorry to disappoint you. While explaining, the Sea King could not help but attack him. In this aspect, he had learned the essence of the player family's verbal cannon, to kill people's hearts. And this stone statue army was the army that was left in the Nether Sea relic after Tian Lan disappeared. Although he had not found a way to control it, he had already moved this stone statue army to Xinmo Island. As a potential force, this stone statue army was also within the scope of the review. Therefore, the Sea King passed the qualification review this time. Hearing this, Yen Wolf's face was as white as a sheet. He knew that everything was over. Now that Yen Dragon was still unconscious, he only had the combat strength of a late-stage Ghost King. How could he challenge the Sea King? No matter how much he said, it would be useless. It was cruel, but it was also very realistic. The power that one possessed determined everything. The current situation was that the power that they possessed was not enough to support their rights and status. It was normal for them to be deprived. Looking at Elder Ing taking out the Sea God's Pardon scroll from the unconscious Yen Dragon, Yen Wolf could not help but clench his fists. However, he knew that he could not resist. From today onwards, the Mu-Tai-Si nation will officially become the Mu-Tai-Si merchants and belong to the soul-devouring Netherworld Sea branch. This Sea God's Pardon scroll has Yen Dragon's soul imprint. Use your blank scroll to devour it. As he spoke, Elder Ing passed the Sea God's Pardon scroll to the Sea King. Taking the Sea God's Pardon scroll, the Sea King could not help but smile. This time, he had become the biggest winner without sacrificing a single soldier. Chapter 510. After receiving Yen Long's Neptune's Pardon scroll, the Sea King pressed it onto the blank scroll in his hand. Golden runes appeared as they danced and rushed towards the blank scroll in the Sea King's hand. Yen Long's Neptune's Pardon scroll gradually dimmed while the Sea King's Pardon scroll glowed brighter. This symbolized the end of Yen Long's glory and the beginning of the Mu-Tai Trade Union's era. Yen Lang's heart felt like it was being stabbed by a knife when he saw this but was powerless to stop it. Ever since they first set off from the fishing village, the two brothers had experienced too much. Their journey was full of hardships and obstacles. Their subordinates had died in battle one after another, but they still managed to withstand the violent storm and kept moving forward. When they obtained the qualification to join the War Chamber of Commerce, they thought that they had bid farewell to the days of killing and danger and that their future would be bright. But now everything was gone. Their future, dreams, hard work, and struggle were all gone like the moon in the water. Under the cruel law of survival, one wrong step would cost them a lot, so much so that Yen Lang found it hard to accept. At this moment, he thought of the promise and oath he had once made, a promise that was more important than his life. Yen Lang could not help but clench his fist. His body trembled slightly as he tore off his clothes, revealing his body that was covered in scars. From Yen Lang's point of view, these scars were not a warrior's glory. They were just punishment for his resistance in order to live a less useless life. Every scar on the scroll recorded a crisis that was enough to kill him. He had survived all of them and was still alive until now. Yen Lang looked at the Sea King. I came from a small fishing village. In our village, all the people who went out to hunt were warriors. Although they were not strong, they had the courage to fight against storms and tsunamis. They worked tirelessly for the survival of their people. However, they were also very stupid and did not know how to be flexible. They only knew how to guard their own land. Even though there was a shortage of food in the village, they still had to offer sacrifices to the strong clans every year. This caused many people to die of starvation every year. However, they were so stupid that they did not think of changing anything. They silently endured all the evil intentions from the outside world. The Sea King did not say anything and looked at Yen Lang quietly. Until one day, two brothers wanted to change everything in the fishing village. Therefore, they chose to resist and chose to walk the path of becoming strong. They wanted to lead the entire village out of this desolate fishing village and welcome a better life. Smoke Wolf continued to speak. Back then, no one knew how difficult and dangerous this path was, but the entire village still chose to trust the two brothers unconditionally. With hot blood and beautiful hopes for the future, they followed them out of the fishing village to face the even crueler laws of survival. This journey lasted for millennia after millennia. The two brothers still remembered the oath they made back then, but the villagers fell one after another. In the end, all of them died in battle on this path to become strong. Living a mediocre life is sad, but at least we're still alive, right? How could this path be so easy to walk? When their mother died in battle, these two brothers gritted their teeth and persevered. When their father died in battle, they endured the pain and persevered. However, when the last of their clansmen, the old clan elder, also died in battle, they regretted their decision. At that moment, the two brothers no longer wanted to resist. They regretted the decision they made back then, which led to the destruction of everything in the fishing village. However, it was too late because the entire village was no longer here. Just as the two brothers were about to give up, the dying clan elder, who was lying in a pool of blood, used the last of his strength to say something. He told them to continue walking. Since you're already on the path, there's no turning back. You're the last hope of the Yen village, and you have to fight on behalf of the Yen village. At that moment, the two brothers saw the hope and trust in the clan elder's eyes. From that moment on, the two brothers from the fishing village swore that they would become the strongest. They would enter the central sea of the Yellow Spring and carve out a path for themselves to prove that they were not wrong. From then on, they never thought of giving up. From then on, no matter who their enemies were, they would not show mercy. They would take back everything they lost, 10 times, 100 times more. They would become the cruelest hunters, using any means necessary to strengthen themselves, to become stronger, until they could change everything. Shan Kuei's force, Blood Extermination Union, Xia Zhao's force. Along the way, no matter how strong their enemies were, they never stopped growing stronger. They would always come back after a desperate situation, becoming even more cruel and powerful than before, and then devour their enemies. This time, it will not change. As soon as he finished speaking, Yen Lang raised the blade in his hand and drew a mark on his chest. Blood dripped down, but Yen Lang didn't even blink. This mark represents the humiliation you've brought me. If there's a chance in the future, I'll return it to you 100 times, 1,000 times more. From now on, the Smoke Dragon Merchant Guild will leave the Yellow Spring Merchant Guild and start anew. After saying that, Yen Lang strode to Yen Long, bent down, and picked him up. Then, he turned around and left without looking back. Looking at Yen Lang leaving, the Sea King was expressionless, but there was a look of contemplation in his eyes. At this moment, Elder Ing sighed. It's because there are people who want to change their fates and become strong that the sea domain becomes so interesting. Just like the Smoke Dragon brothers. What's the point of becoming strong? To enslave others? The Sea King suddenly asked. Elder Ing heard and couldn't help but laugh. He then asked, "Do you want to be a good person or a bad person?" The Sea King's expression froze. After thinking for a moment, he said, "In this world, being a good person means that you're not far from death, so it's not up to me. It's the world that chose me to be a bad person." Hee hee, Doesn't that mean that even if you want to be a good person, you still have to be a bad person, just to survive? The Sea King heard and nodded. This was what he thought. The law of life in this world didn't allow the existence of good people, and good people would never have a good ending. But the real strong can decide whether they want to be a good person or a bad person. This is the right of the strong. It's often said that the more virtuous a person is, the more things he can carry. But in fact, the people at the top of this world aren't necessarily kind people. On the contrary, there are more evil people than good people. On the contrary, those who live at the bottom and struggle for food have warmth for each other. What do you mean? The Sea King's expression froze. What I mean is, kindness is built on the foundation that your strength is absolutely stronger than the other party. A weak person can't be kind to the strong. But to become strong, you can decide all your preferences, good or evil. No external force can affect your thoughts. This is what it means to be strong. That is true freedom. That was what Yanlang pursued. He was pure and kind by nature. He walked out of the fishing village and wanted to bring happiness to his clansmen. However, he was weak and could only go with the flow. A good person would not be able to grow in this world, so he became an evil person and grew by killing. However, the end of his goal was kindness. He only wanted to become strong and then decide everything for himself. Do you understand now? Elder Ing looked at the Sea King and asked. The Sea King was silent for a while and nodded, not really understanding. In fact, his growth was completely different from Yanlang's. He was born in the top force of the sea, the Mute Sea Nation. He didn't have to worry about food, and he didn't have to worry about the safety of his people. Because in that sea, they were the strongest existence, and all forces had to pay tribute to them. And what drove him to grow was ambition and the desire for revenge. But as he grew, the Sea King never thought about what it meant to be strong. Strong people were strong? That's right, but there was no upper limit to one's strength, and there was no way to measure how strong one was. Gods? But above gods were ancient gods, and above ancient gods were great emperors. Even the great emperors weren't the strongest. At this moment, after listening to Yanlang's story and Elder Ying's explanation, he suddenly understood. The strong were the ones who could decide their own thoughts without being affected by external forces. Once they reached this stage, they were the strongest, and also the ones who chose their own fate. Thinking of this, the Sea King couldn't help but nod again. I understand now. No, you don't understand. I don't understand either, because we have never reached this height. We can only guess the thoughts of the experts with the bodies of ants. It is precisely because we have never been there that we have no way to know whether it is really as we think. Looking at Elder Ing, the Sea King couldn't help but be stunned. Do your best. I think highly of your potential, and I believe you'll make a name for yourself. Just as the Sea King was about to nod, Elder Ing continued. Before you, I also thought highly of 5 forces. 4 of them died on this road to becoming strong, and the 5th is the Smoke Dragon Chamber of Commerce. They're in a more worrying situation now. The Sea King was speechless. The Sea King held back a curse in his heart, not knowing if he should say it. Just believe in yourself, it's useless to believe in me. At this moment, Elder Ing smiled and walked out of the spiritual cave. At this moment, the Sea King suddenly looked at Elder Ying's back and shouted. Elder, is the Acheron Chamber of Commerce good or evil? Exploiting many sea merchants, acting overbearingly, and even monopolizing many trade channels, cutting off the path of many forces to rise. It's a great evil. Elder Ing said without turning his head. At the end of the Acheron Chamber of Commerce, is it good or evil? The Sea King asked again. How would I know? I'm just a member of this evil force. How would I know if the person at the top is good or evil? Elder Ing replied impatiently. Just as the Sea King was about to ask again, he saw Elder Ying's figure disappear in a flash. He sighed helplessly. It was rare to meet a super old man. He wanted to ask to broaden his horizons, but it was obvious that Elder Ying didn't want to answer anymore. However, after listening to Elder Ying's words, the Sea King felt that he understood a lot. At this moment, he suddenly thought, will I be able to reach that step, become a strong person, and decide my own fate? An absurd idea even appeared in the Sea King's mind. Overturn the Acheron Chamber of Commerce and replace it. It's meaningless to speculate what others are thinking when they reach the end. Isn't it better to think with your own ideas? The Sea King couldn't help but shiver at this thought. What a wild idea! After spending so much time with the players, how did I become so unrealistic? I want to fly before I learn how to run. The player clan is brainless and unafraid of death. I can't learn from them. Chapter 5:11. After letting his imagination run wild, the Sea King looked at the Neptune's Pardon scroll in his hand. He was very clear about the power of this scroll. It was said that it was made by a demigod in the central ocean of Yellow Spring. Not only was it the symbol of the War Chamber of Commerce, but it was also a symbol of power. This was also the reason why each Yellow Spring branch only had 10 War Chambers of Commerce. As the Neptune's Pardon scroll was too rare, each branch could only get 10 of them. The Sea King could not help but smile. From now on, Langia Island would no longer be his opponent because they were no longer qualified. As long as he had this scroll, not only would his power increase to the next level, the War Chamber of Commerce would also be something that Langia Island could not afford to offend. Thinking about this, the Sea King walked out of the spiritual cave. When he arrived outside, he levitated into the air and flew to the coast. When the Sea King arrived at the coast, the Smoke Dragon Trade Association's fleet had already left. However, what left him dumbfounded was that a large wave of players were fighting with his subordinates below. What was even more outrageous was that many players swung their hammers at his warship while they were fighting. Several warships had already been destroyed beyond recognition. This scene stunned the Sea King for a long time before he came back to his senses. He quickly went forward to stop the players' crazy behavior. What the F***CK, the big leak is here. Brothers, speed up. Before Smoke Wolf left, he said that this guy is now part of the War Chamber of Commerce. Should we kill him? Don't rush, the Sea King is a growing leak. We can't kill him all at once. We have to do it slowly to maximize the benefits, understand? What nonsense are you talking about? Hurry up. The quality of the Sea King's warship is not as good as the Smoke Dragon warship, but the success rate is still relatively higher. Hurry up. After some discussion in the live chat channel, the players acted as if they could not see the Sea King. They swung their hammers and hammered even harder. This scene infuriated the Sea King. He immediately took out the Neptune's Pardon and shouted, "All of you, stop! All of you, stop! I don't want to be your enemy right now." The players pretended not to hear him and hammered even harder. After all, the warships in front of them were like mountains of gold to them. They would not stop unless they died. The Sea King could not help but grit his teeth. The current stage was the beginning of his development. He didn't want to be enemies with any powerful forces. Otherwise, he wouldn't have let Smoke Wolf go just now. If he had killed Smoke Wolf back then, the battle between the Smoke Dragon fleet and them would have started. It was very likely that he would lose the title of War Chamber of Commerce that he had just secured. However, it was clear that these psychopaths of the player clan did not care about this at all and began to act like hooligans again. Although the Sea King did not offend them this time, however, the gamers' mentality was that the leaks were reared by them. What's wrong with harvesting them a little? Is there a problem? There was no problem at all. How could there be an old farmer who worked hard to cultivate without harvesting? Thus, the chives, no, the Sea King became angry. He immediately took out the Neptune's Pardon scroll and began to read the words on it. As the golden characters jumped out of the scroll, the power of the sea was awakened, and a huge wave swept towards the players who were beating them. At this moment, the players could not help but curse in the live chat channel. He felt that the big leak was too much. He actually dared to beat up an old farmer. Was this how a leak should act? Motherf asterisk cur, I'm going to die of anger. Thus, the players hurriedly swung their hammers and punched holes in the battleships one after another. They took advantage of the last moment before they died to quickly slaughter them. Under the huge wave controlled by the Sea King, a large number of players were slapped into the water and then torn apart by the whirlpool. Some were even blown into the air by the storm and killed in midair. When all the players disappeared, the Sea King's face was livid. Looking at the broken battleships, the anger in his heart was indescribable. This time, he did not offend the player clan at all, but he was inexplicably attacked. The player clan was all King psychopaths and hooligans. At this moment, Hei Sui's figure appeared from below and appeared in front of the Sea King. He said with a sad face, "Your Majesty, a total of 36 battleships have been destroyed. The rest of the battleships are more or less damaged." "What exactly happened?" the Sea King asked with a gloomy face. "I don't know. The player clan was originally fighting with the Smoke Dragon fleet. Then, Smoke Wolf returned and left with the entire fleet. Before he left, he even told the players that the Mu-Te fleet is now the War Chamber of Commerce." "And then?" the Sea King asked. "Then, the player clan ignored them and continued to fight them. However, they did not catch up to the Smoke Dragon fleet. Then, I saw a group of people from the player clan whispering in the distance. Then, they turned around and fought us. No, they didn't fight us at all. They just smashed our ships. They're all lunatics." The Sea King could not help but scold them. The Sea King did not expect that Smoke Wolf's revenge would come so quickly. Just like that, the damage was transferred to them. "Your Majesty, haven't the player clan always been friendly to us? What's going on this time?" Hei Sui asked angrily. "How would I know? They're all lunatics. How would I know what's going on in their heads every day?" The Sea King could not help but glare at Hei Sui. The Sea King had a headache dealing with this evil force of players that traversed the two seas and roamed everywhere. They were simply gangsters and locusts. They were the cancer of the cancer. The Sea King felt a headache when he thought that he would have to face the player clan again. With the way the player clan worked, the Sea King felt that negotiating with them was not something that an individual could do. "By the way, Your Majesty, I heard that they seem to call you chives. What does that mean?" Hei Sui asked curiously. "Chives?" The Sea King was stunned when he heard that. "Yes, what does that mean?" Hei Sui continued to ask. "Maybe it's just a nickname. There's no other meaning." The Sea King shook his head in confusion. He did not understand the deeper meaning at all. At that moment, the Sea King looked at the warships below. He had a helpless expression on his face. Then, he sighed. "Let's return to Mo Island first. We'll repair and upgrade these warships. After all, we're going to be sea merchants in the future. We can't just rely on sea beasts as mounts to fight." "I know. Now that we have enough spiritual materials on the island, we can build a batch of high-level Spectre warship. Now that Your Majesty has obtained the qualification of the War Chamber of Commerce, the nearby sea merchants will definitely send spiritual materials over. We don't have to worry about resources." Hei Sui was delighted when he saw the Neptune's absolution scroll in the Sea King's hand. Back then, he had already put his future on the line by following the Sea King. If the Sea King became stronger, they could also benefit from it. "Your Majesty, do you have any plans for the player clan?" Hei Sui asked again when he thought of the player clan. "Don't worry about it for now. Try to avoid fighting and focus on development. We'll discuss countermeasures when we get back." The Sea King felt a headache when he mentioned the player clan. He was quite happy when he saw the Smoke Dragon fleet fighting the player clan. However, it was a different story when he was involved in it. At that moment, the Sea King suddenly thought of what Elder Ing said before he left. Compared to the player clan, the Sea King suddenly felt that the player clan was indeed different. They did not follow the rules of survival at all. They did things according to their own preferences. Good and evil, strong and weak, did not seem to exist in the eyes of the player clan. They just acted willfully and did whatever they wanted. However, even though they were so willful, the player clan was still fine. It was as if this clan had appeared to destroy the rules of survival in the underworld, bringing a hint of the word light automatically flashed across the Sea King's mind. After all, the player clan had no connection with the light. The most they brought to this oppressive and murderous world was the aura of idiots. He had learned the word idiots from the player clan. At this moment, he felt that it was too appropriate to use it on the players. Thinking of this, the Sea King suddenly felt that, if the player clan was allowed to continue to grow like this, would the cruel rules of survival in the underworld that had not changed for a long time be broken by the player clan one day? This thought shocked the Sea King. Sure enough, after being with the player clan for a long time, their thoughts became wilder and wilder. They even thought of changing the cruel rules of survival in the underworld. How could the player clan grow to that extent? The Sea King felt that he had to reduce his contact with the player clan in the future. It was too crazy. Not only did a bunch of new terms appear in his mind, but he also had wild thoughts similar to the player clan from time to time. This made the Sea King feel like he had been assimilated by the idiots. He suddenly felt flustered and exasperated. "Your Majesty, what's wrong?" Sui noticed that the Sea King's emotions were a little unstable. He could not help but ask cautiously. "I'm fine," the Sea King said immediately. Although this was the answer, the Sea King began to think about this problem again. If the underworld was occupied by the idiotic player clan, what would happen? The Sea King could not help but facepalm. This scene was too idiotic, and he could not bear to look at it. At this moment, he thought of the scene of the player clan fighting each other over a disagreement. He also thought of the scene of the player clan fishing, treasure hunting, eating, drinking, and having fun all day long. In this cruel world of survival, the Sea King was not convinced that they could live so happily, but he was impressed by this group of idiotic player clan. It was as if their brains had been swung by a tail. They were so stupid that they could only be happy, but in the end, the Sea King suddenly felt that if all the forces in the underworld could be so idiotic and not kill, they would also be very happy in his thoughts. The Sea King felt that the player clan was a malignant tumor. They were almost assimilated by his thoughts. This was too scary. Sui watched the Sea King's expression change between nervousness and happiness. He felt that the king must be too happy about obtaining the qualification of the War Chamber of Commerce. It seemed a little abnormal. On the player's side, the news of the Sea King becoming a member of the War Chamber of Commerce was quickly spread to the forum. At this moment, many players were dumbfounded. This feeling was like raising a small leak. Originally, they had to help fight off pests from time to prevent it from dying early. But one day, this small leak suddenly grew explosively. This could not help but make the players feel complicated. In the predetermined growth path of the players, the Sea King should first annex the forces of Langya, and then be harvested by them. Then, the Sea King would expand and strengthen, and then harvest again. In short, he would accompany the players throughout the process, grow together with them, and harvest again when the time was ripe. Again and again, an endless cycle, but this time, the script seemed to have gone wrong. Chapter 5:12. The Sea King's growth had obviously exceeded the players' expectations. Although the players were puzzled by this, they quickly understood the reason. After all, this world was running on its own, and the players were only participants, not the ones who were advancing the plot of the world. However, since the Sea King's script had obviously deviated, they had to correct it. As the most popular boss villain in the players' hearts, the Sea King was the first super strong enemy that the players encountered after Instant. During this period, the other opposing forces of the players had fallen one after another, but he had stubbornly stood until now. The players were both witnesses and promoters of the Sea King's growth. They were like children who were raised by one hand, which was why the players called him the first Leak King of War. However, since the Sea King's growth had deviated this time, as an old farmer player, it seemed like he had to help correct it. After all, he was growing too fast, and the players were feeling the pressure. Hence, on the official forum, the players began to discuss how to harvest the Sea King in advance. Watermelon_Taro. Everyone, let's not go overboard. At the very least, don't let the Sea King lose the rights of the War Chamber of Commerce. Otherwise, I'm afraid that if we put too much pressure on the Sea King will not be able to recover. The leaks will go straight from the growth stage to the withering stage, and the losses will be huge. Laughing emoji, assassin_Creed. I don't care about the rest. I'm going to destroy the Sea King's ship first. After smashing a smoke dragon battleship, my battleship swallowed it, and it leveled up by 1.5 levels. The experience is incredible. Tonggua's arrogant face. Roasting Chang-E while hugging the jade rabbit. Yes, let's continue smashing the ship. We'll smash as much as he builds. It's time to absorb the Sea King's power for growth. Laughing emoji. Shirley_the_strongest replied to Roasting Chang-E while hugging the jade rabbit. What's your name? Do you have 2 different accounts? And there's another called Roasting Chang-E while hugging the jade rabbit? I've been curious about this for a long time. Roasting Chang-E while hugging the jade rabbit replied to Shirley_the_strongest. I'll hug and roast whatever I want. As for whether it's 2 accounts, you can guess. Crayon_Shinchan. Tisk tsk. I feel like you guys are parasites on the Sea King's body. Now you guys are going to suck his blood again. The Sea King is so pitiful. He doesn't know anything and is still trying to fatten himself up for you guys to suck. Laughing emoji. Destructive fireworks. The Sea King is still very hard-working. His predicament stimulates his determination to become stronger. Actually, the Sea King is more like a treasure sword that hasn't been unlocked, and we players are the whetstones. We're giving the Sea King a chance to sharpen his blade. Isn't this a good excuse to suppress him? In the forum, many players posted their own suggestions on how to harvest the Sea King. Recently, the plundering development mode had been activated, and the strength of the players had increased rapidly. At that time, they had only targeted the Chamber of Commerce and the Smoke Dragon Force, but this time, the players had decided to include the Sea King. He would add this enemy that he had put aside for a long time to his list of enemies and suppress him. Hence, the Sea King was once again targeted by the players. The harvesting scythe was finally about to swing down. Kuelong Ocean, Xin-Mo Island. The Sea King and his 6 subordinates stood by the coast, looking at his subordinates who were busy building new warship. At this moment, the Sea King's face was full of smiles. Just a while ago, Langia Island had sent a special envoy with abundant resources and spiritual materials. As for the Sea King who had obtained the authority of the War Chamber of Commerce, the allied forces of Langia Island naturally did not dare to make an enemy out of him. After receiving the news, they decisively chose to sue for peace. At the same time, the spiritual materials and resources from the major sea chambers of commerce in the nearby waters had arrived one after another. It could be said that the spiritual materials and resources in the Sea King's hands had doubled over the past few days. However, as for the allied forces of Langia Island, even if they took the initiative to sue for peace, the Sea King still did not have the slightest bit of mercy. Although he had accepted the batch of resources and spiritual materials, he did not agree to sue for peace. Instead, he made a request to the special envoy who had just arrived. He wanted 4/5 of the production points of the marine spiritual materials and treasures in the Kuelong Ocean. This request could be said to be excessive. He wanted 4/5, and the remaining 1/5 would be divided among the major forces of the Kuelong Ocean. It was simply greedy to the extreme. Even so, the Sea King still had the confidence to make the allied forces of Langia Island agree. Because the current him had the right to do so. Back then, he had almost died in the ambush of the allied forces of Langia Island. He had always remembered this grudge. After the conversation with Eldering, the Sea King now had a more ambitious goal. However, this goal was still too far away for him at the moment. He needed a huge amount of spiritual materials and treasures to support the consumption of his cultivation and the consumption of the development of his subordinate forces. Hence, from the Sea King's point of view, even 4/5 was still too little. If it was possible, he would want all of it. Of course, he would not execute this step so early. At the current stage, he needed to consolidate the development of his forces to prevent losing the title of the War Chamber of Commerce. Hence, he decided to stop the oppression of the allied forces of Langia Island. He would leave them a way out so that they would not fight to the death with him out of desperation. In this aspect, the Sea King was very thorough. He knew how to force his opponents into a desperate situation step by step. The initial sense of urgency from the encirclement of the allied forces of Langia Island had faded at this moment. The Sea King was very satisfied. At this moment, a green sea eagle flew over from afar. The ends of the green sea eagle's wings were imprinted with golden patterns. Its claws were also golden. At this moment, its sharp eyes were staring at the Sea King while it flapped its wings at him. Naturally, the Sea King also noticed the sudden appearance of the green sea eagle. His expression immediately froze. At this moment, the sea eagle swooped down. The Sea King stared at the sea eagle in silence, and did not move his body. The approaching sea eagle flapped its wings and stabilized its body. A scroll fell from its golden claws. Then, it flapped its wings and rose into the sky. In the blink of an eye, it disappeared from the Sea King's sight. Upon seeing this, Lan Hushan took a step forward and picked up the scroll. However, he did not open it. Instead, he walked to the Sea King's side and handed it over respectfully. Although it was the Sea King's first time seeing the green sea eagle, he knew its origin. It was the Netherworld Merchant Guild's soul-devouring sea branch's messenger. Although it was in the form of a beast, it had the strength of a ghost commander. This scroll was obviously the first mission given to him by the Netherworld Merchant Guild. With mixed feelings, the Sea King opened the scroll. Netherworld Devouring Sea Branch. Continue to investigate the Kuelong Sea plunder incident and give the sea merchants an explanation. Mute Sea Merchant Guild accepts. As expected, they accepted the mission from the Smoke Dragon Merchant Guild and continued to investigate the incident. The Sea King felt a headache when he saw the contents of the scroll. Because in the Kuelong Sea, other than Tianlan who had disappeared, the biggest plunder force was the Player Clan. It could be said that they were standing on the opposite side of the Sea King. However, the Sea King was not willing to fight the Player Clan just like that. After all, he had witnessed the outcome of the previous one. Starting a war with the Player Clan was obviously playing with fire. After interacting with the Player Clan for a long time, the Sea King felt that the Player Clan was fake. Their true strength was a mystery. If he were to start a war with the Player Clan, the Sea King was afraid that the power that he had painstakingly obtained would be taken away by the Player Clan. However, if he did not deal with it, he would not be able to give an explanation to the War Merchant Guild. How should he weigh the pros and cons and protect himself? This was a headache for the Sea King. Oh yeah, did you find Tianlan? At this moment, the Sea King turned to look at the lords beside him. I didn't find him. It was as if he disappeared into thin air. I think he's dead or escaped from this sea. Sha Shui answered immediately. Hearing this, the Sea King felt another headache. He had already expected the Underworld Sea Merchant Guild's new mission. Therefore, his plan was to capture Tianlan first and use her as a scapegoat for the Player Clan. This would temporarily calm the other merchant guilds down and also serve as an explanation to the Underworld Sea Merchant Guild. However, Tianlan was nowhere to be found. She had even abandoned the powerful Nether Sea Kingdom's Stone Statue Legion. This indirectly confirmed the fact that Tianlan was dead. Otherwise, why would she give up such an important military legion? However, the mess she left behind was troubling the Sea King. Just as the Sea King was thinking about how to deal with this matter, he suddenly turned to look at the horizon. In the distance, countless warships appeared. The Sea King and the lords beside him were very familiar with the warships' outfits. They were the warships of the malignant player clan. At this moment, the Sea King could not help but feel resentful. "I'm trying to find someone to take the blame for you, but you're messing with me again." This feeling made the Sea King very uncomfortable. It was obvious that the player clan did not appreciate his actions. They were even ready to slap him in the face at any time. As for negotiating with the player clan, the Sea King immediately gave up on the idea. Negotiating with a lunatic? What a joke. Their way of thinking was not on the same level. Get ready for battle. Stop them and see what they're up to. Hei Sui and the other lords nodded immediately. Then, they turned around and headed toward the warships docked by the shore. After a moment of preparation, the Mu-Te warriors boarded the warships and headed toward the direction where the player army came from. At this moment, the Sea King's figure appeared on the main warship. Looking at the player fleet from afar, the Sea King sighed helplessly. He did not want to speak anymore. "How unlucky I am to encounter the player clan." As the two fleets approached each other, Hei Sui nodded at the Sea King. Then, he walked to the deck and was about to speak. However, he was shocked to realize that the players' warships were disappearing from his sight one by one. At this moment, the players' heads were moving on the surface of the sea. In their hands, they were still holding onto the black hammer that he found very familiar. "Stop!" Seeing this, Hei Sui immediately understood what the players were going to do. They must be trying to smash the ships again. Obviously, the players did not care about Hei Sui's angry shout. This was because the players were here for this. "Have a taste of my sickle, pa. Have a taste of my hammer, cut. Armor-breaking hammer. Get an SSR. Lux possession hammer. Parts attached to the ship. Listen to my Lux call. Come out." The African players' angry roar. "It's time to turn the tables. I don't know what to shout. I'll shout along with you. Ah." At this moment, the player army that was here to harvest leeks began to punish and smash the Sea King's warship. At this moment, the Sea King could no longer sit still. He shouted angrily and ordered the warriors on the warship to go into the sea to stop the players' crazy actions. Seeing this situation, the players were indignant. "Leeks are biting us now. We've raised them for so long in vain. What an ingrate!" Although that was what they were thinking, the players' hands did not stop. They continued to smash the Sea King's warship with all their might. The live chat channel was filled with cheers from obtaining spare parts from time to time. Seeing this, the Sea King's eyes widened in anger. "If you want to fight, I'll accept it. Instead of fighting, you would rather die than to smash my warship. What kind of divine operation is this?" Chapter 513. While the Sea King was worried about the players, Lu Wu received a piece of good news. Number 1 was back. Number 1, who was specially sent by Lu Wu to collect the Emperor's mirror pages, lived like a bulldozer in America, digging holes and moving mountains. But this time, he brought back 5 incomplete pages of the human Emperor's mirror. Lu Wu had always been lazy when it came to improving his own strength, but with Bei Li's help, his method of improvement was always the best. The Emperor's mirror was once the cultivation method of the strongest people in the 3 realms, so it was not an exaggeration to call it the number 1 cultivation method in the 3 realms. It was good, but what worried Lu Wu was that these Emperor's mirror consumed a lot of soul coins to cultivate. Looking at the soul coins in the inventory, there were already 1.9 billion. Although these soul coins were frequently spent on the construction of the 4 major servers, they were still increasing steadily. As the strength of the player army increased, so did the rate of increase. This was something that Lu Wu was glad about. Now, even the latest server in the Asia server had a steady increase in the income from creating soul coins. Therefore, although the cultivation cost a lot, it was not something that Lu Wu could not afford. Although Lu Wu was distressed about the improvement of his own strength, he would not be stingy and resolutely analyzed the 5 Emperor's Mirror pages. Of course, the analysis step was naturally left to the almighty little Bailey. This analysis cost Lu Wu a total of 780 million soul coins, and one of the pages cost as much as 400 million soul coins. Lu Wu's heart almost broke from the pain. Next, Lu Wu really felt the pain of the divine treasure entering his body. Each Emperor's Mirror corresponded to a human acupoint and opened a divine treasure in his body. Under Bailey's analysis, the 5 golden pages slowly melted. When all the golden pages turned into golden liquid and began to seep into Lu Wu's body, Lu Wu suddenly screamed like a pig being slaughtered. Bailey could not help but hold her forehead when she saw this scene. She felt that Lu Wu's perseverance was not even as strong as the players'. It was like Bei Chen's blade. Even if his arm was forged with flesh and blood, and even his soul was integrated into it to make a weapon, he could still remain silent. He was a real man. There were many such examples in the game, but Lu Wu, as the boss behind the scenes, was the most lazy one. Although Lil Bailey knew that this step was very painful, couldn't she be a little stronger? Big Cat, stop howling. Can't you be a little stronger? As time passed, Bailey finally could not hold it in any longer. It really hurts! Lu Wu yelled in pain. Bailey thought of Lu Wu's past and looked at Lu Wu's current state. She was disappointed that Lu Wu had not lived up to her expectations. She even had the urge to throw Lu Wu into the game and train with the players. However, Bailey knew that it was not the right time. The current structure of the game was still too small. Although the players were developing rapidly, they were still occupying a corner of the game. The strongest regions, such as the Great Region of Hell, the Central Sea region of the Yellow Springs, and the Great Region of Death in the Western Netherworld, had yet to be explored. From Bailey's point of view, it was too shameful to let the big boss behind the scenes appear in the early stages, and it was completely unnecessary. However, Bailey firmly believed that Lu Wu would grow and become the strongest. It was just that the battlefield that belonged to him had yet to arrive. The new battle of the 3 realms, the battle of the outer realms. Bailey started thinking about Lu Wu's growth path in her mind. She also started imagining how Lu Wu would lead the player clan to conquer the world in the future. Ah, I'm going to die. This is too painful. Lu Wu's howl interrupted Bailey's thoughts. Bailey could not help but sigh. At the very least, this guy was still in a useless state. He was only capable of snatching her snack. The only thing that comforted Bailey was that she could see the change in Lu Wu's mentality. He could clearly identify the difference between his past self and his current self. Indeed, a powerhouse had to be nurtured little by little. In terms of nurturing, Lu Wu always felt that he was nurturing Bailey, but Bailey felt that she was nurturing Lu Wu. At this moment, Lu Wu's body was floating in the artifact space. His body was covered in the golden liquid of the Emperor's Mirror, making him look like a golden man. As the golden liquid seeped into his body, Lu Wu's 8 extraordinary meridians appeared in Bailey's vision. 5 of the acupoints began to light up slowly. The impurities inside were flushed out, turning into black liquid that dripped down. "Shorty, do you have any painkillers?" "No. I'll let you die from the pain." Bailey could not help but grit her teeth when she heard Lu Wu call her Shorty. Although he felt that his body was getting stronger, the pain was getting more intense. This torment lasted for more than half an hour before it stopped. When the golden liquid had completely seeped into his body, Lu Wu let out a long sigh of relief. He felt like he had just been tortured in hell, and now he was finally back to normal. Not bad. You've become stronger." Bailey nodded with a satisfied look on her face. Lu Wu immediately lowered his head and started the analysis. Lu Wu, Battle Artifact Owner. Gender: Male, Strength Realm. Divine Treasure Level 6, Ghost King Middle Stage Abilities. Juvenile and I June, Fully Understood. Divine Treasure Body 6. Juvenile and I June, with the help of the Dark Emperor Codex, you have completely obtained the inherited ability and physical strength of the ancient divine beast Juvenile and I June in its primary stage. Emperor's Mirror. Divine Treasure Body Technique Details. One of the 365 missing parts of the Emperor's Mirror. Each part of the divine treasure corresponds to an acupoint in the human body. Every time you obtain a part of the divine treasure, you can carve it into the corresponding acupoint and forge the immortal holy body. Technique hints. After the acupoints that nurture the divine treasure are connected, the power of this technique will be greatly increased. When all 365 acupoints are nurtured into the divine treasure and form a heavenly cycle connection, the body can be transformed into a realm. Opened acupoints. Shinzong Acupoint, Baihui Acupoint, Shenting Acupoint, Taiyuan Acupoint, Tsugu Acupoint, Chimen Acupoint. 6. Bestowed Divine Powers. Immortal Body, Immortal Soul. With the help of the Shinzong Acupoint, the body and soul can complement each other. When the body is damaged, it can be repaired with the help of the soul. When the soul is destroyed, it can be repaired with the help of the body. 6 acupoints are connected. Effect. The body can be used as a boat to cross yin and yang. Divine Powers Analysis. After opening 6 acupoints, the body can break through the barrier between the heaven realm and the yin realm. It can travel back and forth without any medium. It can also break through the barrier between the 3 realms and travel to the outer realm. Unactivated Shinzong Acupoint 359. Shaochong Acupoint, Second Lidue Acupoint, Tsuchi Acupoint, Ingu Acupoint, Shuahai Acupoint, Yifeng Acupoint. Lu Wu was stunned when he saw that his strength had reached the middle stage of the Ghost King realm. That's fast. Of course. You're the only one who improved your strength in the battle. The others grew with their own strength. Bailey shrugged helplessly. Lu Wu's face turned serious when he heard that. Nonsense. Look at the growth that I've gained from all the suffering I've suffered. Bailey's face was filled with disdain when she heard that. She did not speak but stared at Lu Wu. Lu Wu felt awkward. After thinking for a while, Lu Wu asked, "Foodie, you said that you'll tell me the truth when I'm stronger. What do you think of me now?" Lu Wu stretched out his right hand and flexed his bicep. Bailey shook her head expressionlessly. "You're still a weakling. With your strength, even the immortal emperor from the heaven realm won't look you in the eye." Lu Wu was a little dispirited when he heard that. He felt that he still had a long way to go to become stronger. "But I can tell you something about the emperor," Bailey suddenly said. "Speak." Lu Wu's eyes lit up when he heard that. "Who do you want to know first?" Bailey continued to ask. "I only know about Slayer. I heard it from the evil demon god. He seems to worship Slayer." Lu Wu could not help but roll his eyes. Bailey's eyes flickered when she heard the word Slayer. She took a deep breath and said, "The Emperor, Slayer, was a powerhouse before the 3 realms was formed. The human sovereign extermination was a powerhouse before the 3 realms was formed. He was also known as the human ancestor. He was the earliest human sovereign, and it was under his leadership that the human race rose rapidly. There are many legends about him, but one thing is for sure, he was the strongest person in the 3 realms. He was stronger than other human sovereigns, and he was also stronger than the immortal emperor of the heaven realm and the great emperor of the underworld." Lu Wu nodded and continued to ask, "I remember the evil demon god once said that he was known as the Sky Devil. He was plundering resources in the extraterrestrial realm. Why did he do that? Wasn't he looking for trouble? It's great to be the overlord of the 3 realms. Why is he so murderous?" Bailey suddenly revealed her canine teeth when she heard that. "He's not murderous. He has a bigger goal." What goal?" Lu Wu was stunned and asked curiously. Bailey's eyes flashed with a hint of struggle. She seemed to be hesitating if she should say it. Looking at Bailey's expression, Lu Wu immediately gave up asking. He was about to let it go when Bailey spoke again. Big Cat, what do you think the players rely on to grow? Plunder. Lu Wu answered without hesitation. That's right, plunder. Do you remember what I said? The Heaven Realm and the Underworld both have sacred artifacts that absorb the spiritual energy in the extraterrestrial realm, but the human world doesn't have them. I remember, but what does this have to do with slaughtering and plundering the extraterrestrial realm? You're saying that Slayer wants to build a sacred artifact that belongs to the human world and the human race to absorb the spiritual energy in the extraterrestrial realm? Bailey nodded and then shook her head. It's not as simple as a sacred artifact. He wants to build a real race artifact that is countless times stronger than the heavenly axiom and the 6 paths of reincarnation. An immortal sacred artifact that can allow the human race to stand at the top of the extraterrestrial realm. For this, he needs countless resources. That's why he embarked on the path of plundering the extraterrestrial realm. He's sacrificed too much to nurture this immortal sacred artifact that can never be full. At this moment, Bailey's expression turned gloomy. Don't tell me that the immortal sacred artifact that can never be full is you. Lu Wu asked in shock. No, I'm full. Bailey immediately denied. I doubt it. Lu Wu continued with a doubtful expression. Upon hearing this, Bailey's face turned sullen. Her little canine teeth were bared. So you'd better show some respect to Slayer in the future. Otherwise, you'll definitely regret it. Don't forget, he's the ancestor of the human race. I know. Lu Wu waved his hand to show that he understood. That glutton, who created the heavenly axiom of the Heaven Realm and the 6 paths of reincarnation in the underworld. Or were they born naturally? Lu Wu suddenly thought of something. I don't know. Maybe it was Slayer too. Before he was born, there didn't seem to be 3 realms. I don't know how it was formed, but that's my guess. After Slayer was born, he accidentally came to the extraterrestrial realm and realized that he could absorb the spiritual energy from the extraterrestrial realm. He was troubled as to why there was no spiritual energy in the world he lived in. So, he installed a sacred artifact that he forged at the front gate, Heaven Realm, and another one at the back gate, Underworld. Did you see it with your own eyes or did you guess it? Lu Wu could not help but ask. I guessed it. I wasn't born yet. Bailey spread her hands helplessly. You old witch. You lied to me that you were 300 years old. I think you've lived for at least a few 100 million years. Lu Wu suddenly yelled. Upon hearing this, Bailey could no longer hold it in. She leaped from the ground and bit Lu Wu's arm. Shut up! Die. Chapter 5:14. Now that the god had escaped, he couldn't order his clansmen to search for him. Otherwise, the Rahu clan would not be spared if the Heaven Realm found out about this. At this moment, Luoxio was helpless. He looked at the divine fire in his hand. A meteor-like flame streaked across the sky. It slowed down as it moved forward and landed on the ground. He moved his body slowly and lifted his feet. He gritted his teeth and wanted to move forward. However, he was only a few steps away from the defeated god of the Heaven Realm, but there was no external force that could help him. Next, as long as he fused with the flame, he would be able to cultivate the yin and yang spiritual energy fusion technique again. I'm an archer. I just activated my eagle eye and noticed that there seems to be someone in the fireball. What's going on? What Lu Wu needed to do next was to recoup the large amount of soul coins that he had burned to improve his strength from the players. At the same time, in the west of the land of the 9 luminaries, although the land of Rahu was powerful, the players were more familiar with the land of the 9 luminaries than the soldiers of Rahu clan. Moreover, the main purpose of the players wasn't to fight. They were just looking for opportunities to plunder some spiritual mines. At this moment, Luoxiao could only lie on the ground and wait for his body to repair itself. From the initial calmness, the players' expressions gradually turned into horror as they discussed. At this moment, the motionless body of the god that was lying on the ground suddenly levitated into the air and flew toward the east. Whoever regained control of the body first would be greeted with death. He had two choices as to where he could escape to. However, after the arrival of the Smoke Dragon clan, the players' focus had completely shifted to the Battle of the Sea. Therefore, the land of the 9 luminaries had been relatively peaceful recently. Apart from a few players, there were basically no disturbances. Under the rule of the Rahu clan, all the spiritual minds and resources left behind in the land of the 9 luminaries belonged to them. At this moment, the players and NPCs in the Mansion of the Dead had naturally noticed the flame. They couldn't help but discuss about it. With the 18 layers of the realm barrier and the vast land area, it was the best place to hide. Although the players had a share of the profits from this battle, the resources that the players received were undoubtedly too little compared to the gains of the Rahu clan. She only said that the danger of the Outland would come, but she had no idea when it would come. Although he knew that he was not cultivating the Runhuang path, he did not give up on this method of cultivation. Therefore, Luo Xiao was prepared to wait until he had devoured and fused with the divine fire before killing it. From Bai Li's explanation, Lu Wu gradually gained a better understanding of the emperors of the ancient times. The extraterritorial Saint Spirit Dao is the cultivation Dao of a large extraterritorial clan. It is also a paramount Dao. This is the first time I've seen a shooting star in the game. I want to make a wish. Please let me obtain a legacy class. At that moment, the god's body suddenly fell from the sky and landed on the ground. The great emperor of Feng Du still gave him an answer. He waved his hand, and the crimson blade immediately approached him, dragging the ball of golden flames with it. Just as Rashu was about to swallow the divine fire, he suddenly turned his head to look at the lifeless body of the god. After a moment of silence, the figure slowly stood up again, gritted his teeth, and walked towards the motionless figure on the ground, not far away. Bomberman will die a horrible death. During this period of time, other than the huge amount of spiritual materials provided by the king of the Rahu clan for his consumption, the corpses of the 9 luminaries' brothers had also become sacrifices for his rapid increase in strength. In order not to implicate others in this battle, he ordered that no one should come to help, including his brother, the king of the Rahu clan. A shadow of the Azura demon god appeared behind him, and then it left the body and pounced towards the god. Seeing this, a smile appeared on Rashu's face. He then reached out his hand and clenched it. Rashu clearly knew that while he was repairing himself, the god from the heavenly realm who was lying not far away was also repairing his body. Since North Sea could do it, why couldn't he? Therefore, after some preparation, he chose to kill the god again. However, at this moment, he actually lost his life. Just as Rashu was feeling puzzled about this, the figure disappeared on the spot and suddenly appeared in the sky. Then, it galloped towards the east. After staring at it for a moment, it swallowed it in one gulp. In just a few months, its strength had risen all the way from the Ghost King. This speculation sent chills down their spines. Therefore, this scene really frightened Rashu. By the time he reacted and wanted to chase after it, the god's body had already flown far away. It was already unrealistic to chase after it. He had planned for this battle for a long time. Therefore, a speculation appeared in their mind. The surroundings fell into silence again. Time seemed to be stretched out and became so unbearable. This was because the place where the fireball crashed seemed to be the mansion of the dead. As long as he could obtain the divine fire, he could walk on the path of supremacy again. Although this path was full of danger, he was willing to fight for it. Therefore, after completing the divine treasures in his body, Lu Wu once again sent number 1 out to investigate and find the remaining pages of the Emperor's Mirror. 9 glories. Lu Wu could not help but feel nervous when he heard it. After knowing that his speculation was wrong, Rashu suffered a huge blow. After some hesitation, he decided to go to the land of Naraka. As for the god who had lost the divine fire, since he had already escaped, he should just let him be. Without the divine fire, he could not cause any trouble. He might even be abandoned by the group of heartless gods in the heavenly realm. And it was time for him to start his life as a fugitive. Another immortal has come to the underworld. He was just a few steps away from obtaining the divine fire with the advantage of speed. The shadow of the Shura demon god approached quickly and grabbed the god, pinching him in his hand. This made Rashu's face turn gloomy. As time passed, a wisp of blood was born in Rashu's body, which was already dry and clean. It began to swim in his body and nourish his withered body. Baki, the mansion of the dead. However, while improving the player's strength, he naturally would not neglect the improvement of his own strength. At that time, Rashu, who was unwilling to give up, asked the Emperor of Fengdu again what path he was cultivating. That was exactly what he desired. With drowsy eyelids, he turned his head to look at the god lying not far away. With the help of the Shura eye, he saw the swaying divine fire in the god's body. At this moment, Rashu was confused. Looking at the flame, Rashu's face revealed a greedy look. After all, the strength he possessed at this stage was still unable to compete with the heavenly realm. Therefore, he quickly asked, "Everything was fine a second ago." Suddenly, he heard a loud noise and the scene turned black and white. He had been waiting for this moment for a long time. His strength was recovering bit by bit. Rashu closed his eyes tightly and prepared for a fatal blow. Just as Lu Wu was considering if he should organize a lucky draw, Bailey, who was still biting Lu Wu's finger, suddenly loosened her grip. She then said with a serious expression, "After the disappearance of the 9 luminaries' brothers, the history of this region had turned to a new page. It had once again returned to the peaceful times without any war. It seemed like he could not take these few steps anymore." Rashu felt that his body was completely out of control. Even though he was roaring in his heart and wanted to walk towards the figure not far away, he fell to the ground again after taking a few steps. After leaving the Emperor's illusory world, Rashu returned to the 9 luminaries. However, Bailey did not say much about the matters of the extraterrestrial realm. "Where is it?" Especially the players who stayed in the buildings, they died in a daze. Looking at this scene, Rashu was shocked. He initially thought that the fusion of yin and yang spiritual energy was the strongest path to become the Emperor, but he did not expect that to be the case. He was cultivating the path of the Emperor. Could it be that the mansion of the dead was blown up by the Bomberman again? In this battle, the gods from the heavenly realm were extremely powerful. Under the protection of a solid foundation, his strength broke through the Ghost King realm, then the Ghost Emperor realm, and reached the demigod realm. At this moment, Rashu suddenly opened his eyes and reached out his hand to grab the god who was far away. No matter how strong his will was, he still could not support his powerless body. Thinking of the explosion just now, this speculation seemed to be very reliable. At this moment, some of the players could not help but curse in their hearts. Even though his comprehension of the Azura laws was extremely thorough, he had still paid a heavy price for it. The moment he became the king of Rahu, he met the Emperor of Fengdu and asked about one thing. Although he had once slain a god, the process of this battle was still extremely arduous. "Oh my god, run, stop talking nonsense." However, the answer he got was no. In order not to implicate the Rahu clan, after successfully slaying the god, he would not return to his clan and gave up his position as the king of Rahu. The moment the fireball landed, a huge crater was formed in the square on the east side of the mansion of the dead. The surrounding buildings were destroyed beyond recognition, and a large number of players were killed in the safe zone. As the divine fire and his body were violently repelling each other, Rashu began to think about his next step. Believe it or not, this is a new expansion pack, the precursor of an alien invasion. When this meteor lands, the new expansion pack will be activated. After that, he became the king of Rahu and was successfully crowned, receiving the blessings of the great emperor. As if caused by the falling meteorite, the ground on the west side of the land of the 9 luminaries cracked and formed a huge crater. Magma gushed out from the crack, and everything around was destroyed. There was no sign of life, and it was a scene of doomsday. In his opinion, after being deprived of the divine fire, even if he was a god, he would not have any power and would be equivalent to an ordinary person. He should not be able to resist at all. This naturally caused a lot of dissatisfaction among the players. Therefore, before the Smoke Dragon clan arrived, the players would often go to the land of the 9 luminaries to steal things. The reason why Rashu did not kill him after depriving him of the divine fire was to prevent his death from alarming the gods in the heavenly realm and causing another heavenly god to descend. When Rashu reached out to grab the fireball, he finally could not help but laugh out loud. As Rashu's voice fell, the shadow of the Shura demon god transformed into a crimson blade and pierced into the god's body. As the tip of the blade pierced through the barrier, it also brought out a golden dancing flame. However, his body was at its limit, and he fell to the ground after taking a few steps. A figure was standing in the center of the area. His body was moving up and down, and he was panting heavily. Lu Wu did not ask much about this, but he knew that the players were his trump card and also his weapon to fight against any forces. Even if he was deprived of the divine fire, he should not die so easily. He should still have a chance of survival, so why did his chance of survival disappear at this moment? Wait, did you guys notice? This fireball seems to be coming towards us. You're dead. Boom. Chapter 5:15. The players who were unaware of the situation and accidentally died were completely shocked by their own guesses. Therefore, they quickly logged into the forum, ready to activate their keyboard warrior mode and fight the Bomberman. However, at that moment, the forum was already discussing this matter, and some players even started a live broadcast. In the image, a man with skin as fair as jade, without a speck of dust on his body, was lying quietly in the east square of the Mansion of the Dead. The ground was smashed into a deep pit by his body, and the surrounding buildings within 100 meters were destroyed beyond recognition. At that moment, a large number of players gathered around and stared at the man, dumbfounded. After the analysis was initiated, the players learned the man's identity information. Fu Bao deity state broken. Character details. One of the 72 supervising oracles of the Heavenly Strategies Supervisor, responsible for observing the situation of the 3 realms, at the same time shouldering the responsibility of erasing all unfavorable factors to the heavenly realm. Character status. Near death, deity state broken, deity state weakened continued. The players were shocked to see this person's information. Because they had never heard of the existence of the heavenly realm, they were naturally curious about this new area. However, what surprised them even more was that the ability of this man who fell like a meteorite was actually at the deity state. This realm was no longer unfamiliar to the current players. This was because many of their enemies were working hard to reach this realm, including Xing Yao and Yuanxiu, who built the evil demon formation. The players clearly knew how terrifying this realm was. It was very far away from them, and it was so powerful that it was almost impossible to defeat it. Therefore, the players were naturally curious to see a powerhouse who had reached the deity state for the first time. Why don't we kill him? Will we directly level up to 100, or will we get countless soul coins? Don't, this guy looks like a good person. Can you tell a good person by looking at his face? Then who can I complain to if I'm ugly? Stop arguing. Let's wait for him to wake up first, then we'll talk about compensation. He smashed many things, so let's talk about compensation first, then how to deal with it. I suspect this guy has something good. While the players were discussing, Fu Bao, who was in a coma, suddenly opened his eyes. Looking at the surrounding players who were pointing at him, Fu Bao's mind was filled with the battle between him and Luo Xiu just now. Just half a day ago, as the supervising envoy, he discovered that a demigod expert was wearing the forbidden Een talisman of the heaven-defying alliance when he was inspecting the situation in the netherworld through the heaven-seeing eye. Bearing the responsibility of wiping out the remnants of the heaven-defying alliance, he immediately chose to come to the netherworld. But what he didn't expect was that this demigod realm heaven-defying thief's strength was so strong that he had even mastered the power of law that only gods could master. His valiant battle prowess in battle had even stunned Fu Bao. He had an almost invincible physical body and a Dharma projection that could transform into all kinds of divine weapons. In this battle, Fu Bao could be said to be completely defeated. He was at a complete disadvantage in terms of combat skills. During this time, he tried to escape several times, but to no avail. At this moment, he knew that he had been deceived. This person had obviously used the heaven-defying alliance's Een talisman to lure him here, with the goal of killing him. Unwilling to give up, he resisted with all his might. However, even though he possessed the battle prowess of a god, he was still no match for Luo Xiu, who was a demigod. In the end, his divine flame was taken away. The divine flame that he had painstakingly cultivated for countless years disappeared just like that. Unwilling anger appeared on Fu Bao's face, and he could not help but gradually clench his fists. He knew that he had to return to the heaven realm as soon as possible. Otherwise, without the divine flame, his body would gradually be eroded by the Een Qi if he stayed in the netherworld for too long, and he would completely lose his divinity. However, without the divine flame, it was equivalent to losing the strength to break through the netherworld's barrier. He could not rely on his physical strength to return at all. Fu Bao's expression was gloomy. He knew that the current situation was very disadvantageous to him, and he might even die here. While he was deep in thought, Fu Bao suddenly thought of the Een talisman. It was something that could help him pass through the barrier between realms. Hey, let's talk about compensation, shall we? At this moment, a voice rang out, interrupting Fu Bao's thoughts. He raised his head and looked over. A player dressed in a mage's robe was looking at him curiously, occasionally poking his face with the staff in his hand. His gaze was as if he was looking at a monkey in the zoo, and his face was asking for a beating. Ant of the netherworld, I am the heaven realm's supervisor. Fu Bao immediately announced his identity, wanting to intimidate this person. It was obvious that this title was useful to everyone except for the players. The player continued to poke Fu Bao's face with the staff again and again. That god can't be unreasonable, right? You broke so many things and you don't want to compensate? Many of our brothers who were smashed to death by you are cursing on the forum. Don't you know how big of a mistake you have made? Although he did not understand what the player was saying, his tone and expression made Fu Bao extremely unhappy. As a god of the heaven realm, even if he was seriously injured, he still had a sense of superiority towards these creatures from the netherworld. He felt that no matter what, he was still a god, and these people in front of him were just ants at the lowest level of the netherworld. They were not on the same level at all. Call the ruler of your big region here. I have something to discuss with him, and I will reward you greatly later. Fu Bao spoke again, suppressing the anger in his heart. That won't do, you have to compensate first. This is not a discussion with you, can't you be reasonable? The mage player said while poking Fu Bao's face. At this moment, his body was almost unable to move, and Fu Bao's eyes were almost spitting fire. Do you want to die? You are too unreasonable. It's fine if you don't want to compensate, but you are even threatening me. This is a bit too much. As he spoke, the player continued to poke Fu Bao's face with his staff, looking dissatisfied. At this moment, the crowd of players dispersed, and Gu Yu arrived with the dog. When they used analysis to look at Fu Bao's details panel, they were also shocked. What the F***ck, a godly state master, awesome. The dog immediately stepped forward and jumped onto Fu Bao's chest. He stared at Fu Bao's face from a close distance and said in surprise, "Get lost." Fu Bao immediately shouted at the dog's action. He was a god. How could he allow a creature from the bottom of the netherworld to touch him? He is angry. Godan was shocked. At this moment, the surrounding players burst into laughter. At this moment, the god of the heaven realm was really like an animal being watched. "Brother, what's going on?" Guyu pulled the dog away from Fu Bao, then looked at Fu Bao curiously and asked, "Call your ruler here. A lowly creature like you is not worthy to talk to me." Fu Bao looked at Guyu coldly and snorted. At this moment, the smiles on the players' faces froze. In fact, the players were still very curious about Fu Bao, but it was obvious that this god did not give them any face at all. His words were full of arrogance, and he even called them lowly creatures. Obviously, the players could not tolerate this. Therefore, the surrounding players could not help but roll up their sleeves, and Guyu also had a helpless expression on his face. He then took a step back, looked at Fu Bao and said, "I hope you can have a good chat later." As Guyu retreated, the players stepped forward and began to gang up on him. Although Fu Bao had lost the divine fire, the strength of his divine body was still there. Without the support of the divine fire, this strength would gradually weaken, but at this moment, his body was not afraid of these injuries at all. However, some of the players attacked him viciously, causing damage on a spiritual level. All sorts of despicable methods were used, and this undoubtedly caused Fu Bao to feel extremely aggrieved. However, no matter how angry he was, the players did not care at all, punching and kicking him. Not far away, Tong Gua and the Rock Ghost King, who had just bought a limited supply of the special Wood Spirit wine from the Wood Spirit clan's wine shop, passed by this place with their arms around each other's shoulders. Seeing this scene, they were curious and immediately stepped forward. At this time, the players also ended the gang fight. When the Rock Ghost King and Tong Gua saw the figure in the pit, both of them gasped in horror. "Bastard from the heavenly realm!" Tong Gua cried out in horror. Hearing this, Fu Bao looked at Tong Gua with hatred, who was holding a wine pot. "Who are you scolding? The explosion just now was caused by this guy." Tong Gua ignored him and turned his head to look around. When the surrounding players heard this, they nodded subconsciously. "So you guys did it just now?" Tong Gua continued to ask in disbelief. "He didn't compensate us and even scolded us. He's too unreasonable, so we attacked." The dog answered indignantly. "We have to find a way to hide him, or else we'll be in big trouble." The Rock Ghost King said with a serious expression. "What kind of trouble?" The dog asked curiously. "This guy is from the heavenly realm. If we offend him, the consequences will be terrible." The Rock Ghost King could not help but explain. "Heavenly realm, Jade Emperor? Where do they live in the sky? The stratosphere or the troposphere?" The dog asked curiously. "Haha, this is a game. Why don't you ask the King of Hell whether he lives in the earth's crust or mantle, stupid dog?" The wizard holding the magic staff suddenly mocked. But then, his face turned serious and his figure slowly shrank into the crowd, gradually disappearing into the sea of people. When the dog turned his head to look at the source of the voice, the person had already disappeared. "Since you know who I am, quickly go and get your His Excellency here, then I can let bygones be bygones." At this time, Fu Bao looked at the Rock Ghost King and said. Hearing this, the players looked at the Rock Ghost King, wanting to see what he had to say. The Rock Ghost King looked conflicted and fell into deep thought. Seeing this scene, a smile appeared on Fu Bao's face. Now that this person knew his identity, everything else would be easy. After all, in the underworld, no force dared to go against the heavenly realm. Why don't we find a place to dig a hole and bury him, to prevent this guy from being discovered? At this time, the Rock Ghost King suddenly said. "Yes, bury him, and set up a few more layers of barriers, just to be safe." Tong Gua also chimed in at this time. The Rock Ghost King and Tong Gua's answers stunned Fu Bao. At this moment, he suddenly felt that the idea of revenge in the underworld had been revived. If it was a member of the heaven-defying alliance, he could understand. After all, this group of people always wanted to defeat the heavenly realm, and it was not the first time that they had killed the gods of the heavenly realm. But now, ordinary forces in the underworld had the idea of going against the heavenly realm, which was difficult for him to understand. Do you know the consequences of doing this? Thinking of this, Fu Bao, who was panicking, immediately spoke up. Of course we do, so don't we have to set up a few more layers of barriers and bury you tightly? Tong Gua chuckled. Hearing this, the players looked at each other, then looked at Fu Bao with evil intentions. At this moment, Fu Bao felt aggrieved and panicked. Chapter 5:16. The appearance of the talisman did not just alarm the players. Even Lu Wu and Bai Li, who were behind the scenes, were surprised. Lu Wu and Bai Li watched the entire battle between Luo Xiu and Fu Bao with the help of the artifact. This battle could really be described as world-shaking. Luo Xiu's strength was countless times stronger than when he defeated Xing Yao back then. It could be said that he had been suppressing Fu Bao the entire time. Whether it was combat skills or the use of law abilities, Luo Xiu flung Talisman Bao several streets behind. Fu Bao, on the other hand, could only rely on his divine body that had ignited his divine fire, as well as his incredible recovery speed. But even then, Luo Xiu still reached the point of being like a dried-up lamp in the end, and he was forced by the extremely strong recovery ability of the talisman treasure to the point he practically lost all his combat strength. Lu Wu had been watching the entire battle. Even though Luo Xiu was not a member of the Heaven-Defying Alliance and had nothing to do with him, Lu Wu knew that Luo Xiu was not a member of the Heaven-Defying Alliance. Even so, Lu Wu was still on Luo Xiu's side. After all, the Heaven Realm was also his enemy. In the end, when Rashu succeeded in slaying the god, Lu Wu was very pleased. However, when the escaping talisman fell into the mansion of the dead, Lu Wu was shocked. Destroying the eastern plaza of the Mansion of the Dead was a small matter, but the problem was that this fellow was a ticking time bomb. A deity had mysteriously disappeared. When the time came, the Heaven Realm would definitely find out and come to investigate. Although Lu Wu was delighted to see the players ganging up on each other, he also sensed the danger afterward. His current strength was obviously unable to contend against the Heaven Realm. If he were to start a war with the Heaven Realm because of the talisman treasure, then he would suffer a great loss. It could be said that the talisman was now a ticking time bomb. If it exploded, the power would be more terrifying than the one that destroyed the underworld. However, the good thing was that the talisman no longer had the divine flame. It would not be easy for the Heaven Realm's powers to find him. At this moment, Tong Gua, Rock Ghost King, and the others were already thinking about how to deal with the talisman treasure. Tong Gua's forging room. Gu Yu, Lu Chai, Sun Qi, Tong Gua, the Rock Ghost King, and Xiao Tian were staring at the talisman treasure lying on the ground with serious expressions. Big Goose, is it really as scary as you say? At this moment, the dog turned his head and looked at Tong Gua with fear. Upon hearing this, Tong Gua slapped the dog to the ground. Call me Big Goose one more time and I'll cripple you, stupid dog. The dog got up from the ground and turned his head to look at Tong Gua, waiting for his answer. The forces of the heavenly realm are far more powerful than any of the forces that you have come into contact with. As for how powerful they are, let me give you an example. If all of the forces in the underworld were to join forces and fight against the forces of the heavenly realm, they would definitely emerge victorious even though they would suffer heavy losses. Tong Gua explained with a solemn expression. Let's kill him, Go Zi said without hesitation. A hint of disdain flashed across Tong Gua's eyes as he looked at the dog. Even though he doesn't have his divine flame and his body is deteriorating, he isn't weak to the point where we can break through his defenses. Do you think he's that easy to kill? Really? Go Zi was suspicious. Go ahead and bite it. Tongua could not help but roll his eyes. Driven by curiosity, Guzi walked to the side of the talisman and bared his teeth. What do you want to do? Fu Bao rebuked angrily. I'm just baring my teeth. Look at how scared you are. Sun Qi had a look of disdain on his face as he walked back to Gu Yu's side. Why don't you try biting it? Gu Yu could not help but tease him. Upon hearing this, Guzi showed a look of resentment. He was not a dog, what was there to bite? It was infuriating, so, what should we do with this guy now? Lu Chai could not help but ask. Send me back to the heavenly realm, and I'll let bygones be bygones. Fu Bao, who was lying on the ground, quickly said. Everyone ignored Fu Bao's request and continued to discuss among themselves. During the discussion, each of them put forward their own ideas. Xiao Tian suggested sending him to the depths of the ocean and then setting up a water prison to imprison him. The Rock Ghost King suggested burying him in the glacier to the south of Beiki and freezing him for eternity. Tong Gua suggested stuffing him into the forging furnace and refining him bit by bit to forge an artifact. Fu Bao was frightened by the suggestions and felt that his future was bleak. This was worse than being killed. Even though he had never experienced the feeling of being sealed, Fu Bao still felt unbearable just thinking about it. Enduring the ravages of time in a dark space without any daylight was too cruel. What do you think? Which suggestion is better? Tongua turned to look at Gu Yu and Lu Chai. Gu Yu nodded. I think we can do whatever we want with him. However, if he can be refined into an artifact, then it'll be equivalent to maximizing the benefit. I think this is feasible. No, this method is also the most dangerous. We can't tell when the forces of the heavenly realm will come looking for us. Xiao Tian and Uncle Rock's suggestion is acceptable. Let's find a place to bury him and put an end to it, Lu Chai immediately rejected. How about this? Let's find a place to bury him first, then install a furnace at the place where we bury him, and put him inside to refine. After a few years we'll dig him out. Isn't that the best of both worlds? Go Zi said with a proud face. Upon hearing this, Tong Gua's face showed a look of disdain. Silly dog, if I'm not around to look after him, you'll have to wait for at least a few thousand years just by relying on the flame of the forging furnace. Can you afford to wait? Guzi heard this and looked resentful. Haha, it's okay. Guzi's descendants can afford to wait. First, write a will with the coordinates of the refining furnace. After a few thousand years, let your descendants dig it out and become rich overnight. Lu Chai could not help but laugh. That's enough. At this moment, Fu Bao finally could not stand it anymore. Listening to their conversation about refining and burying, Fu Bao felt that his spirit was being destroyed. If you don't want to be found by the forces of the heavenly realm, why don't you just kill me? Fu Bao immediately rebuked. Do you think we don't want to? Isn't it because we can't kill you? What suggestions do you have? Tongua could not help but curl his lips. Fu Bao's words were really awkward. Asking himself if there was a way to kill him, he really did not want to answer this question. Compared to being sealed and enduring endless loneliness, he would rather choose death. I've now lost the divine fire and my body is being eroded by the yin energy of the underworld. My divine body is gradually weakening. You can wait until my body is weakened to a certain extent, then you can easily kill me. Fu Bao thought for a while and gritted his teeth. How long do you want to wait? You'll have to wait for at least a few thousand years for your body to degenerate. I can't afford to wait. Pass. Tong Gua immediately waved his hand and refused. Bury him. At this moment, Gu Yu also changed his mind and said, Bury him. Lu Chai immediately agreed. Seeing that he was about to be sealed again, Fu Bao quickly said, Don't worry, I have a way to quickly destroy my divine body and speed up the rate of my divine body's decline. Fu Bao's heart was full of resentment as he said this. He was thinking of a way to kill himself, but he still had to beg others to do so. It was so frustrating. In the path of cultivation, Fu Bao had always been smooth sailing. This was the first time he had tasted malice. At this moment, he thought of the description of the underworld from his celestial friends and elders. The sinful land was full of killing and plundering, and the extreme malice of human nature played out every day. Mutual deception and unscrupulous means were the main theme of this world. They could even bend their knees, abandon their beliefs, and abandon their dignity in order to survive. Thinking of the peace of the heaven realm, where all the cultivators cared about was talent and their own efforts, and comparing it to the sinister underworld, he could not help but grit his teeth. I don't understand why the immortal emperors did not wipe out this sinful land. Sinful? Tong Gua could not help but laugh when he heard this. You're indeed a fool. Who do you think created the cruel laws of survival in this world, and who do you think it's for? If it's peaceful, then your immortal emperors would think about how to wipe out this world. The current underworld is what they want, and they think it's the most perfect. Looking at the disdain on Tong Gua's face, Fu Bao was stunned and immediately said, "What do you mean?" "Nothing, I'm too lazy to explain it to you. Hurry up and tell me how to die, or I'll bury you." "I'm asking you what you mean." Hearing Tong Gua's slander of the heaven realm, Fu Bao's face was full of anger. Clap, 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 clap. Tong Gua did not explain. He raised his wings and gave a series of Tong Gua rapid face slap. Seeing this, Sun Chi decisively started recording. He felt that he could make it into the latest gif of Tong Gua's face slapping, which could be sold for a small sum of money on the forum. "Hurry up and tell me how to die. Can't we continue our conversation? Where's the method we talked about just now?" Tong Gua said with dissatisfaction after he stopped. Fu Bao did not answer. His face was full of anger, and he looked at Tong Gua with his teeth clenched. "If you keep this up, we won't have anything to talk about. I can only bury you." Looking at Fu Bao, Tong Gua sighed. "Think about it, tens of thousands of meters deep in the ocean, a place where light can't reach. You can't hear or see anything, but you can still think. Just like that, you spend countless years in solitude. How tragic!" Go Zi suddenly said. "Think about it. You're buried deep in the glacier. As your divine body degenerates, you'll gradually feel the cold. However, you can't leave or even move. You'll be wrapped in cold air for countless years. It's so cold." Gu Yu sighed. "I'll talk." Facing the threat of being sealed, Fu Bao finally chose to compromise. He then clenched his teeth and said, "Hurry up and release it. Why are you taking so long?" Tong Gua gave Gu Yu and Sun Chi a look of approval, then looked at Fu Bao impatiently and asked, "My divine body no longer has the divine fire. It's equivalent to my entire divine body structure losing its core. Now, my body structure is like a formation. As long as you poke a corner of the formation, it will quickly decay. As long as you do as I say, I'll die immediately because of the loss of my life." Fu Bao said angrily, "Go on. Can you be more detailed? How else am I going to kill you? Really, can't you be more straightforward?" Tong Gua said impatiently. At this moment, Fu Bao was so angry that he could not help but cough. Not only did Tong Gua ask him to provide the method of death, but he also showed an impatient attitude and was full of malice. His words even destroyed his nerves from time to time. Fu Bao felt that he had never felt this aggrieved when he fought Luoxiu. At this moment, Fu Bao wished that his strength could be restored. Even if it was only for a second, he would definitely slap this arrogant goose to death. Chapter 5:17. In the Arctic abyss to the south of Baiki. In the deepest part of the barrier, the territory of the Iced clan, which originally belonged to the Iced clan, was now covered in snow, and it was completely silent. In front of the cliff behind the Ice Snow clan's territory, a formation was slowly forming. It was Tong Gua and the Rock Ghost King who had drawn the formation. According to Fu Bao, he had a way to poke his god body to make his god power leave quickly, and this formation was to destroy the negative energy formation in his body. Tong Gua and the Rock Ghost King were still skeptical about this. Therefore, they chose the Ice Snow Clan's territory, which had a shielding barrier. This territory was the Ice Snow Clan's place of refuge. It was said that it was set up by the Baiki Celestial Clan, which could completely block the detection of the outside world. Naturally, they did not have to worry about being discovered by the Heaven Realm if they set up a formation here. Tong Gua and the Rock Ghost King racked their brains to ensure that the divine body would not go to waste, because setting up this formation was simply too difficult. Although Fu Bao would give them pointers from time to time, Tong Gua and the Rock Ghost King still felt that it was not something that the Celestial Crane Tree could do. The complexity of the formation was beyond their imagination. Fortunately, they did not need many materials. Otherwise, Tong Gua and the Rock Ghost King would not want to waste any more time. They would just find a place to bury the treasure talisman. Compared to Tong Gua and the Rock Ghost King, Fu Bao was suffering more. It had only been a day since he arrived in the underworld. First, he was beaten up by Luo Xiu, then his godly fire was taken away. Then, he encountered a group of hooligans, especially that arrogant goose who was inhumane. Now, he had to instruct the goose on how to set up a formation to kill him. If it was a few days ago, Fu Bao would have never believed that he would be in such a miserable state. In his opinion, the worst that could happen to him was to be stripped of his position and become a wandering god in the heavenly realm. It wasn't until he descended to the underworld yesterday that he realized what it meant to be a god who descended to the underworld being bullied by geese. However, in order not to be sealed, he still chose death. Was it cowardice? He admitted that he was weak. In reality, his mentality had already changed the moment the divine flame had been taken away from him. Disappointment, regret, hatred, and abandonment, various negative emotions intertwined in his heart, causing him to feel lost and at the same time want to escape. Moreover, he knew very well how painful it was to be sealed. He had once read the mysterious sky sealing record, so he knew many examples of once illustrious gods who had been ravaged by time in the seal. According to what his master had said, if one day he was going to be sealed for countless years, choosing death at that moment might be the best release. Therefore, he chose death in order to escape the destruction of the seal. Even though he felt aggrieved, he still gritted his teeth and directed Tong Gua to arrange the melting formation that was completely opposite to his own divine body. Time slowly passed, and when the last line of the array formation was completed, a purple light flowed from the end of the array formation to the center area. When all the lines of the array formation were lit up, a semicircular purple energy shield covered the inside of the array formation. At this moment, Fu Bao could clearly feel his divine body weakening even faster. Phew, it's finally done. This was too difficult. Tong Gua stretched out his wings and wiped the sweat off his forehead as he looked at the formation. Is this thing reliable? Looking at Fu Bao imprisoned in the center of the formation, the Rock Ghost King could not help but frown. I don't know. According to him, even with the melting formation, it would take about half a year to break his divine body. We still have to wait. But this is the Ice Snow Clan's territory, and he's already imprisoned. Don't worry. Tong Gua laughed loudly. I didn't expect to have the chance to kill a god from the heaven realm. My life was worth it. The Rock Ghost King also laughed. Let's celebrate. Let's go back and have a drink. Let's go, your treat. Thus, the tree and the crane put their arms around each other's shoulders and started walking back to the mansion of the dead. As for the safety of the Ice Snow Clan's territory, they were very assured. Back then, the Heaven Realm had been searching for so long without finding this place, so they had nothing to worry about. As for Fu Bao, they had no pity in their hearts. This was because every life in the underworld hated the Heaven Realm, but this hatred had always been suppressed in the bottom of their hearts. After Tong Gua and the Rock Ghost King left, the surroundings fell into silence. Fu Bao lay on the ground, looking up at the sky without a trace of emotion on his face. The sky was a vast expanse of whiteness, and feather-like snowflakes drifted down from the sky, sprinkling down. Listening to the faint whistling of the wind in his ears, Fu Bao actually felt a chill at this moment. This chill did not come from the feedback of his body, but from the fear in his heart. He tried hard to suppress this emotion, but the fear still spread and flowed uncontrollably from the bottom of his heart. I am a god, a noble heaven realm god. Fu Bao comforted himself and encouraged himself. However, in this cold and silent ice-snow world, who would see his fake courage? In the end, he gave up on comforting himself and lay quietly on the ground, feeling the divine power in his body drain away. He had grown up in a comfortable environment since he was a child, and the concept that he had received from a young age was the dangers of the underworld, as well as the nobility of the heaven realm. This time, he had fallen into the hands of the creatures of the underworld, and it was difficult for him to accept such a way of dying. At this moment, Fu Bao's heart was filled with extreme resentment towards the underworld. He hated this dark world, hated all the creatures that lived in this world, and hoped that this world would be destroyed. At this moment, a figure appeared beside him. This person's face was blurred, and his whole body was shrouded in shadows. His appearance suddenly shocked Fu Bao. You think that this world should not exist? A hoarse voice came from the black shadow. Yes, it should not exist, it should all die. Fu Bao replied through gritted teeth. Why? The person continued to ask. Despicable survival rules, irredeemable root. Just as the seniors said, this world is beyond cure, and it has already decayed. Fu Bao answered without hesitation. Decay. My thoughts are the opposite of yours. I feel that this world is glowing with a brand new life. I see the despicableness and decay that you speak of in you. If all the gods in the heavenly realm are as weak as you, then the heavenly realm is really beyond cure. T. Fu Bao immediately rebuked. Slap. Lu Wu slapped Fu Bao's face. Isn't your cowardice, your fear, and your choice to submit the truth? Although the survival rules in this world under my feet are cruel, I have seen many ambitious warriors who would rather die than submit. Even if they die in battle, they will not be as weak as you and beg for death. Do you know why you are no match for Luo Xiao? He is only a demigod, and you are a god who has ignited the divine fire. You should have the absolute advantage, but when you face him, it is so difficult for you to even resist. You can only rely on the recovery ability of your divine body to hold on. Fu Bao was furious when he heard this. Just as he was about to reply, Lu Wu spoke again. Because Luo Xiao is a warrior who killed his way out of a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood. He has been studying how to survive his whole life, so he needs to constantly break through his own limits to improve his combat skills, improve and improve. And you are just a flower in a greenhouse. How can you compare to him? Any of his life and death experiences might be enough to defeat you, a piece of trash. In fact, he even has the courage to start all over again, while all you are relying on is that divine flame that was taken away from you. Without him, you are nothing. You are weak to the bone, and you are essentially a sheep. How can you contend against a vicious wolf? If there are two creatures with the same strength, why would one of them become a mount? Lu Wu suddenly asked. I don't know. Because of personality, because of the nature, because one has the heart of a powerhouse. Even if they have the same strength, the other can still command you, who has the same strength. This is the difference. Doesn't this coincidentally show the evil of this world? If there is peace, why would they fight so hard? Fu Bao immediately retorted. Who do you think caused all of this? Is this the world itself like this? If it was possible, who would be willing to suffer for tens of thousands of years just to prolong the life of a dying beauty? If it was possible, who would be willing to lead the young and old of the fishing village out of the fishing village to face the cruel laws of survival. If it was possible, who would be willing to bring a few brothers to join the army and fight for the future. While he was angrily rebuking the 9 luminaries' brothers, Sangshu, the Sea King, and the others appeared in Lu Wu's mind in this world, who would be willing to live in fear, just like what Xing Yao once told his brothers. No force can survive for long. One day, it will be destroyed. This sentence expressed the sadness behind all the forces in the underworld, including the extremely powerful forces that ruled over a part of the world. None of this was what they wanted, but they had to face it. Fu Bao only said that the cruel laws of survival were despicable, but he did not understand the bitterness and struggle behind the cruel laws of survival. Moreover, none of this was what they wanted. I know you don't understand. Take a look and see how noble you think the heaven realm is. As Lu Wu's voice trailed off, the artifact was activated. Countless images flashed across Fu Bao's mind like a slideshow. At this moment, Fu Bao saw a girl with a sweet smile. Her name was Xian Ku, and she came to the underworld from the heaven realm. This scene came from Sangshu. At this moment, Fu Bao seemed to have become Sangshu, and he began to experience the path that Sangshu had once walked. He wanted to see the true different side of the so-called cruel laws of survival. As he learned more, Fu Bao was gradually shocked. However, he still had his stubbornness in his heart. He still held on to the pride of the heaven realm, until he saw the deal between Sangshu and the gods of the heaven realm. What this man did to keep a woman from the heaven realm alive deeply shocked Fu Bao. When the gods of the heaven realm mercilessly chose to abandon Xian Ku, only Sangshu, who he thought had grown up step by step in a despicable way, was still holding on. He was even willing to go against the heavens by himself. At this moment, Fu Bao felt as if something in his heart was broken. Everything seemed to be different from what he knew, and the elders never said that, "You are just an ordinary god. What you know is what others want you to know." In this world, everyone knows the truth of the cruel laws of survival, but they have no other choice. "It's fake, I don't believe you, you can't fool me." Fu Bao suddenly glared at Lu Wu and said angrily, "Some things, if you don't experience them, you will never know the truth. How about this, let's make a bet." Lu Wu looked at Fu Bao and said with a smile, "What do you want to bet?" Fu Bao asked with a ferocious expression. "Bet on whether you will be abandoned after your divine body breaks." Chapter 5:18. Hearing Lu Wu's words, he answered Fu Bao without hesitation, "Bet, what are you going to do?" As he said this, Xian Ku's experience flashed across Fu Bao's mind, but he chose to block out all the images and stick to his idea. He grew up in the heaven realm, so he did not believe Xian Ku's experience was real, nor did he believe what Lu Wu said. "All right then, I will modify you so that you will not be able to speak of my existence and the things I don't want you to say. You just have to wait, they will come." As soon as he finished speaking, Lu Wu pressed his hand on Fu Bao's head. At the same time, Bailey, who was in the artifact space, began to burn her soul power to modify Fu Bao and inject the taboo. Although he had lost the divine fire, Fu Bao's body was still terrifyingly strong. This process lasted for a full 4 hours before it ended. Next, Lu Wu's soul power began to catalyze the formation under his feet, speeding up the loss of divine power in Fu Bao's body. At this moment, Fu Bao's eyes widened, because he could clearly feel his body deteriorating, and he felt himself getting weaker and weaker. The moment his divine body was broken, Fu Bao could not help but vomit blood, looking dispirited. Although he knew that this day would come sooner or later in the formation, Fu Bao was still full of resentment when his divine body was broken. He had spent countless years cultivating to the divine state, but now it was all gone. "This is your so-called bet." Fu Bao looked at Lu Wu and gritted his teeth. Hearing this, Lu Wu waved his hand and dispelled the formation on the ground. He looked at the dispirited Fu Bao and said, Don't worry, what you want will come soon. Looking at the pale-faced talisman Bao, who was shivering in the cold wind, Lu Wu thought for a moment. He extended his hand and injected some soul power into Talisman Bao's body to sustain his last breath of life. After that, Lu Wu walked out of the Ice Snow Clan's territory with Fu Bao, then took out a Yin talisman from the artifact, which was the symbol of the heaven-defying alliance that belonged to the North Sea. After waiting for about a minute, Lu Wu's figure flashed and disappeared, entering the artifact's space. This was because the enemy that was coming was not something he could handle with his current strength. Only Fu Bao was left shivering in the cold wind. At this moment, his divine body was broken, and the Yin energy was corroding his body. He looked as miserable as one could imagine. He stared blankly in the direction where Lu Wu had disappeared. Until now, he still did not understand what this so-called bet was. Did he think that she would agree with his views just because he made himself so miserable? At this moment, a golden light shone in the sky. It was as if a golden sword had sliced through the sky, creating a huge crack. At this moment, two figures descended from the sky and quickly descended. Seeing this scene, Fu Bao's face revealed an indescribable surprise. He knew he was saved. At this moment, these few figures were heading towards the Talisman Bao. In the blink of an eye, they arrived beside the Talisman Bao. "Master!" Fu Bao couldn't help but exclaim when he saw the old man leading the group. He did not expect that the person who came was his master. At this moment, he was even more certain that everything Lu Wu said was false. How could they abandon him? Meanwhile, the green-robed old man's figure flashed and appeared by Fu Bao's side, and he asked with a serious expression, "Why are you here? Also, the traitors of the heaven-defying alliance are still here." Fu Bao immediately opened his mouth to explain. However, when he said that his divine fire had been taken away, especially when he encountered the players and Lu Wu, no matter how hard he tried, he could not say these words. Instead, he felt a stabbing pain in his head and felt dizzy. The person who took your divine fire is called Luoxiu. Although he is not a member of the heaven-defying alliance, he is also on the kill list. After your divine fire was taken away, we noticed him and have started to hunt him down. As for you, we thought you were dead. I didn't expect you to still be alive. I am very pleased," the old man said with a smile. However, when his hand touched the Talisman Bao, his expression suddenly changed. His body was empty and devoid of divine power. All that was left was the wisps of Yin energy that had seeped into his body. "Master, my divine body is broken," Fu Bao said bitterly, thinking that his master was worried about him. "Not only is your divine body broken, but most importantly, your body has been penetrated by Yin energy." At this moment, the man standing beside the green-robed old man with a sword said, "What a pity! Fu Bao was a good seedling and had the chance to become a celestial master." The green-robed old man said with a long sigh, "Master, I can cultivate again. I still have a chance." Fu Bao said immediately, thinking that his master was worried about him. "There is no hope. The Yin energy has entered your body. Under such circumstances, there is only one way for you to cultivate." The man who had spoken earlier continued. "What is it?" Fu Bao asked immediately. "First cultivate to the ghost realm, then kill the gods and take away the divine fire. Otherwise, you will not be able to cultivate the celestial method," the man said disdainfully. "Bao, I didn't expect you to encounter such a situation." Sigh. The green-robed man sighed again. "Master, take me back first. It's so cold here," Fu Bao said bitterly, having suffered a blow to his heart. Before Fu Bao's master could reply, the man with a sword said again, "You still want to go back? Do you really think you are still a person from the heavenly realm? Now that the Yin energy has entered your body, you can't go back." Hearing this, Fu Bao was terrified and quickly turned to look at his master. However, what he got was not comfort from his master, but a cold gaze. Master, Bauer, don't blame me. If I take you back, how will others look at me? You don't belong to the heavenly realm anymore. Just live on. At this moment, a scene appeared in Fu Bao's mind. In the scene, the immortal Sir from the heavenly realm rejected Songshu's request heartlessly. His cold gaze was like a sharp sword, piercing and sharp. It was a very similar scene. He had followed his master for 800,000 years. He had always regarded his master as his family. He did not expect that his most trusted family would abandon him because of a fake reputation. The snowstorm around him did not seem to be as cold anymore. The coldest thing was his master's words, which completely shattered the determination in his heart. His master was immortal Sir Ching Mo, a powerhouse who had participated in the Battle of the Three Realms. Everything he knew was taught and taught by his master. Therefore, he trusted his master very much. Everything he said was the truth. However, at this moment, the truth shattered his fantasy. His master once said, "The heavenly realm sent troops to suppress the rebellion in the underworld. The sinful land should have been wiped out, but the immortal emperor was merciful and did not want to in that sinful land. Everyone was cruel and bloodthirsty. They would do anything for their own benefit, but the people in the heavenly realm valued relationships." All of this seemed so fake to Fu Bao. How about a bet? A bet on whether you will be abandoned. It turns out that he already knew the result of this bet, because everything I thought was wrong. The stubbornness in his heart completely shattered. Fu Bao looked at his master with a pleading face and begged, "Master, I don't want to stay here. I'm your disciple, I want to go back. I have many disciples. From now on, your name is removed." The green-robed old man took a deep breath and said coldly. After saying that, the green-robed old man withdrew his hand and ignored Fu Bao on the ground. He turned around and flew into the sky with his companions. Fu Bao was left lying on the ground in despair.